Good evening and welcome to the North Georgia GMRS Regional Net. Tonight we are live from Studio Vanguard and we're linked in with the following repeaters.
We are linked in with Flagship, McDonough, Columbus, Noonan, Jersey, Zello, Lula, Toccoa, Rome, Zebulon, Watkinsville, Salicoa Ridge, Dallas, Ocala, Lookout Mountain, White Oak Mountain, Cades Cove, Fort Mountain, Chattanooga, Georgetown, and Ottawa, and of course our VoIP service, Zello.
Did you say Salicoa Ridge?
Yeah.
Is that a brand new repeater?
Well, a week or two old, yeah.
Wow.
We had it last week.
These things are sprouting up like Dollar General stores.
Is that it?
That's it. That's all of them for this week.
All right. Well, tonight our RF coverage encompasses approximately 26,240,000 acres. This net takes place every Thursday evening at 7:30 p.m. I'd like to thank everyone who has made the North Georgia GMRS the most expansive and active GMRS network in the country. Your net control tonight is WQIR 514, Atlanta 947. My name is Julie.
This is Atlanta 946, WQIR 514. My name is Justin.
And Atlanta 750, WRMR 367. My name is Jeff.
On the net, you can talk about your day's activities, radio equipment, or anything you think we'd like to hear. This is a family-based network, so we encourage you to get your family involved. Guest check-ins are welcome from anyone with a valid FCC call sign. Once the floor is open, it's permissible to address other members of the net by their name or tactical unit number. Your FCC call sign is only required when you check in and check out of the net. Also, you can tune in to our YouTube channel and follow along. Or even better, tune in after the net to watch your appearance on the network and hear how you sound to us right here in Studio Vanguard. Be sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment so we know you were watching. These interactions mean the most to help our new channel grow. So tonight, Jeff, what's our topic?
Our topic is RF tools. Tools that you would use to test your radio equipment, antennas, and all the things radio related. Your RF toolbox.
Very nice. Well, with that, let's find out what's going on. It's time for Catch Up with Kate.
Who's on the foot pedal?
Me.
Let go.
This is WRMR 367, Atlanta 751, Kate from high atop Mount Waleski, live in Studio C, with this week's Catch Up with Kate, the latest NGGMRS sauce. The following regional gatherings are an opportunity to meet with like-minded North Georgia GMRS Network members. It's a great way to meet new friends and associate a face with a voice for many who we talk with over the air. These events are arranged by various members and cover a large portion of the network. The West Side Bunch will gather for lunch on the second Saturday of June at 11 a.m. This will be June 8th. This week, so mark your calendars. David and Lisa, Dallas 20 and Dallas 21, will have to miss this one as they are on vacation this week. All are welcome to attend this luncheon at Taco Mac in Marietta. The address is 2650 Dallas Highway, Suite 110. The Northeast Bunch will gather for lunch on Wednesday, June 26th at Roosters. Roosters is located at 89 Long Branch Road, Dahlonega at the end of 400. The Chattanooga folks will gather for lunch on June 21st at Champy's in Eastridge, 6515 Ringgold Road. So pack it up and enjoy some good food and great people of the NGGMRS community. The same folks you talk with on the radio. Thanks to our hosts, Ronnie, Chat69, and Jim, Chat84. Let me break. The annual Peachtree Road Race is coming in July, and they still need to fill positions at the finish line. These are perfect roles for GMRS operators. The AJC Peachtree Road Race is the world's largest 10K road race. The Atlanta Track Club and local Aries Group are trying to fill positions for all skill levels, including brand new radio operators. Shifts start at 4:30 a.m. on Thursday, July 4th, and end by noon. The sooner they can fill these remaining slots, the sooner they will know what services they can provide the medical branch during this event. To sign up, go to Google and enter Atlanta Track Club. When you click on that site's homepage, there is a banner promoting the event, and you can click Volunteer. The next page, there is an option to enter a password. The password you should enter is PRR24HAM. That's Papa Romeo Romeo 24 Hotel Alpha Mike, to see the slots that they need filled. Here is where you will enter your contact information and register as a volunteer. The next Skywarn Net on June 11th will be a continuation of the National Weather Service Skywarn Spotter Field Guide, starting on page 31. Please have your computer available and follow along. From the Stockbridge Group, the local canine search and rescue team is looking for anyone interested in training their own dog in search and rescue. They provide training support free of charge. Also, support people are needed. If you are interested or know someone that is, please reach out to Bruce, McDonough 39 for more information. The Little Miss Radio Net was a huge success. We wish to thank Atlanta 255, Jen, for hosting the net, and we want to thank all of the ladies and the guys for supporting the net. Congratulations, and we look forward to the next Little Miss Radio Net. Stay tuned for more information. Let me break. North Georgia GMRS Network is happy to announce we will be working with the Pickens County Sheriff's Department again this year for the annual Jeep Fest Crawl for the Kids event. This is a charity event put on by the Sheriff's Department every year. The event starts Thursday, August 29th with the night ride and ends on Sunday, September 1st. North Georgia GMRS will be assisting with the communications for the duration of the event. We are also looking for volunteers who have Jeeps with GMRS radios to assist with reporting trail conditions throughout the weekend. We also have a need for non-Jeep volunteers for help with various tasks around the grounds, such as working the information booth. If you can help with the event, please email jeepfest@nggmrs.org. Many hands make light work, so the more volunteers we have, the better. And be sure to tune in Friday night for the Friday at 9 Simplex Challenge. This week is a continuation of the backup emergency power topic. This week, the Simplex Net will be meeting on the ball ground repeater at 8:15 for check-ins. There will be testing on 2-meter as well if you have your amateur license. 2-meter testing will be from 8:15 through 8:55 on frequency 146,550. And then GMRS Simplex testing will start at 9 p.m. Look for more information on Facebook or call out to Atlanta 250 Dana sometime before the challenge for more details. That's all the catch-up in the packet. If you have any questions, suggestions, or spicy announcements for us to catch up on, send me a note at kate@nggmrs.org. And please try to have them in by Tuesday at noon so that we have time to prepare to make sure your announcements get on the air in time for Thursday night's net. We are North Georgia GMRS Network. This is WRMR 367, Atlanta 751. My name is Kate. Now back to Net Control.
Well, thank you for that, Kate. So this is WQIR 514. My name is Julie. I am Atlanta 947 with this week's new user tips and operating procedure segment. This week, we will talk about radio tools such as test instruments, tools for terminating cables, and other common tools in your RF toolbox. Whether you use high-end commercial test instruments such as the Bird, Site Analyzer, or the hobbyist class of tools like the SureComm or the Nano VNA, any and all of these tools can be valuable tools for validating your antenna system and can quickly identify problems in your system. Other tools might be a simple digital VOM. A volt ohm meter can be vital in troubleshooting many radio troubles, and there are many tools to choose from. Did you know there is an online tutorial that shows you how to turn a Harbor Freight $7 VOM into a relative field strength tester? Let me break. Other tools might be trimmers for cutting LMR 400 correctly for fitting cable ends on. These termination tools are often specific to a brand of cable and connector, but when you invest in high-end cables, the tools to make them up correctly begin to make sense. The best part about these tools is you can use them to build your station and make it the best it can be. And then you can use them to help others make incremental improvements as they can. These are just a few of the preferred practices of the North Georgia GMRS members, and these procedures are how we become the best operators on the nation's largest, most advanced linked repeater network. And remember, if you have any questions or suggestions for new user tips and operating procedures, send me a note at julie@NGGMRS.org. We are North Georgia GMRS Network, and this is WQIR 514, Atlanta 947. Good night, everyone.
Well, thanks again, Julie, for opening the program and for those valuable tips. And
Well, we needed adult supervision to at least start the program.
yeah, it's a good thing she brought a quarter because I forgot all about putting one in the machine.
Oh, my.
That's probably why it wasn't working.
Yeah. So, that's really interesting that we're all geared up and ready to go. And just as Jeff was ready to click the mouse to tell the stuff to start the online stream, the internet drops out. And we don't know why, but it did come back, fortunately. And hopefully it'll remain up for the duration of the program. But,
you never know.
We've come to rely on things that we have little control over. And so we were in the process of trying to determine, do we punt?
Yeah.
Do we run to the tiki bar and run the show from there? Or do we need to fire up the radio in one of the trucks? And, Studio F, we've done that before.
Yes,
and
we have.
we could do it again. But fortunately, the network came back, and we're good to go. So with that in mind, I think what we'll do is continue taking check-ins. We've got a really good list on the roster so far, but there's room for some more. So we had a little difficulty with Zello earlier on, and just in case we didn't get all the Zello check-ins, we'll start there. So anyone wishing to check in using the VoIP app on your phone, this will be your time. If you're using a radio, please hold your traffic until the Zello check-ins are done. We are a little bit handicapped tonight in logging, so nice and slow, one at a time. And let's go ahead and break for Zello check-ins. Zello check-ins only, please.
All right. Good night, guys.
This is WSCE401 Toccoa 32. Checking in on Zello. I've also checked in on YouTube, but you can switch me over to Zello.
This is Atlanta 725, WRNV 615, David in Holly Springs, checking in and checking out.
This is WRMG 494, Atlanta 292, Derek in Rockmart, checking in, checking out. This is WRYZ 968, Gainesville 100 in Palawan Island, Philippines. Checking in, checking out. Have a great net.
Do I have to go back and listen for David's in Holly Springs, or was that a guess?
This is
No, that's a.
This is WRWM 344, Blue Ridge 63, checking in from the rainy Orlando, Florida.
This is 27 WSBC, checking in, checking out.
This is, hopefully I'll know, it might be missing. This is Atlanta 261, WRCT 399 from downtown Woodstock, my first live concert in almost 2 years. I'm checking in and out. Thank you.
Were those all VoIP?
This is WSCV 559, Atlanta 900, checking in and out from the shores of Lake Lanier. Have a great night.
Yeah, actually, believe it or not.
Well, that one was flagship.
You're missing Blue Ridge 43. No, that's Free Salad, never mind. He didn't update his Zello.
Okay. All right, that was a great run of check-ins. I think most of those were Zello check-ins. We heard Dakota 32 Terry in Mount Airy. I believe Terry is in tonight. I missed a lot of the in and out, so we'll sort that out as we go. Also, we heard Atlanta 725 David in Canton. Oh, actually, he's in Holly Springs, or is he in Canton? I'm not entirely sure. But David, we've got you in the log tonight. We heard Atlanta 292 Derek in Rockmart is in and out. Gainesville 100 Randall in Buford, we've got you in the log tonight. Blue Ridge 63 Mike in Orlando, we've got you in the log tonight. I'm going to show you as in and out. We have Rome 27 Terry in Menlo is in tonight. Atlanta 261 Scott in Holly Springs. Pretty sure Scott was in and out. I'm going to show him that way. Scott, if that's wrong, you'll have to text me. And then we have Atlanta 900 Keith in Smyrna is I've got you in tonight. Those are the check-ins I have at this time. Let's continue on with check-ins from any Zello user and any repeater other than flagship. Net control, standing by.
This is Bomb 27 WSBC 635. I'm checking in, checking out. You got me marked as check-in.
Free Salad says he's home from dinner, so we're switching him back to in.
This is Larry, Chattanooga 127, WSAI 340. I'm checking in from the road, traveling from Chattanooga to Knoxville.
This is Atlanta 514 WRZK 312, Mike in Cartersville checking in.
Are you missing one?
This is WSCD 445 Chattanooga 123, Steve and Ringo checking in and out.
This is Larry, Chattanooga 127,
is SBV 753, Alabama 22, Hal in Cedar Bluff, checking in and checking out.
This is Peter, Columbus 25, WSCC 901, checking in and checking out using Zello.
This is WRV 372, chat 160, Chickamauga, Georgia. Dave checking in, checking out.
This is WSCC 345, Noonan 345, Tim and Sonoy checking in and checking out.
There we go.
I think he said in and out.
I think he did too. All right, I'm going to go ahead and acknowledge this last round of check-ins. I think I already acknowledged some of these. I may repeat some of these, but I'd rather do that than leave anybody out. So let me just do that. I have Toccoa 32, Terry in Mount Airy. I've got you marked as in. I have Atlanta 725, David in Holly Springs is in tonight. I have Atlanta 292, Derek in Rockmart as in and out. I have Gainesville 100, Randall in Buford is in tonight. I have Blue Ridge 63, Mike in Orlando is in tonight. I have Rome 27, Terry in Menlo is in and out. Atlanta 261, Scott in Holly Springs in and out. I have Atlanta 900, Keith in Smyrna is in tonight. Chattanooga 127, Larry in Chatsworth, I've got you marked as in. I have Atlanta 514, Mike in Cartersville is in tonight. Chattanooga 123, Steve in Ringgold in and out. Alabama 22, Hal in Cedar Bluff is in and out. Columbus 25, Peter in West Point is in and out. I have Chattanooga 160, David in Chickamauga is in and out. And I have Noonan 345, Tim in Sonoya is in and out. Those are the check-ins I have at this time. If I did not call your name, it's because I missed your check-in. You guys are doing a great job. Nice, slow pace. I especially need that tonight. So thank you for that. We'd like to continue with check-ins from any repeater anywhere. Traditionally, we hold off flagship check-ins to the very last because that's where so many of the doubles come from. But tonight, we're going to do things differently. And no one will double because everyone will pay attention when they hit that PTT and make sure the air is clear. This is WQ. What am I doing? Where am I at? Oh,
you ever done this before?
No. Net control standing by from check-ins from any repeater anywhere, including flagship one at a time, please. That was Noonan, but it's unreadable.
This is Atlanta 255, WSAM 586, Jennifer in Dawsonville, checking in.
I'm taking that empty space.
Okay.
For YouTube.
Is that it? Are we done? One at a time is not too hard when there's only two.
Oh, good.
This is Noonan 483, Randy Todd, WSCB 952, checking in.
I heard Noonan 4-3.
Also.
Not only did we have an internet blip, but the server for YouTube's acting wonky too. It was a double whammy on us to start.
Oh boy. Is it straightened out, or are we?
I think so. I think I fixed the chat. It's still complaining about bit rate, but yet it's still streaming okay, so we'll see how it goes.
This is Atlanta 395 WSBP 983. Mark from Marietta checking in and out.
All right, let me go ahead and acknowledge this last round of check-ins, and then we can go ahead and get started with things. So we have a guest check-in on YouTube. We have WSDA207. Kathy is checking in on YouTube. Also, we have Rome12 Mark is checking in on YouTube. We heard Atlanta 255. Jennifer in Dawsonville is in tonight. Noonan 43. James in Peachtree City. Had a rough copy on you, but we finally got you in there on the Noonan repeater. We've got you in the log tonight. And we heard Atlanta 395, Mark in Marietta, is in and out tonight. Those are the check-ins we have. So at this time, I think we're going to go to the top, and we'll talk about RF tools. So some of the tools that we use. We have tools that we use at repeater sites, and we have tools that we use on our own personal equipment and our vehicles. We have a rig expert that we're able to use, and that's a wonderful tool that shows you graphically what your SWR looks like. It can give you a really good idea as to whether your tuning is high or low, and can give you an idea of where you need to be or what changes you need to make to get an antenna tuned right to the center that you want to be at. We also have a Bird 43 with a pretty good assortment of GMRS slugs and a few other slugs. For those that don't know, a slug is a device that you can insert into the Bird meter to determine what frequency and power level you're going to take readings at. And by changing the slugs, you can change the values that meter is tuned for. So with the Bird meter, you can read forward and reflected power pretty easily. And that's another way of determining what your SWR is, by determining the relationship or the ratio between forward power and reflected power. And so, Jeff, let's talk about SWR for just a moment. Why do we need to look at SWR in an antenna system?
I don't know. Why do we? Why do we care?
Well, the big part of why we care is we want a low SWR value, because that's a measurement of the efficiency of our antenna system. If you're seeing readings that are above 1.5, if you're seeing readings that are 1.7 to 1 or 1.8 to 1, or if they're 2 to 1, then that's not a very efficient antenna system. And if you are operating your radio, the energy that you're radiating from your antenna isn't going to be as strong, and the reflected power coming back into your radio from the antenna is going to result in that radio generating heat, and heat with electronics can be destructive. So we want to achieve the best SWR values that we can when we're setting up an antenna system. And so meters like the Rig Expert or the Bird Site Analyzer. I've had a chance to use the Site Analyzer a couple of times at work, and what a cool tool that is. Now the Site Analyzer kind of is a combination of everything that the Rig Expert is and everything that the Bird 43 is, because you can measure forward and reflected power through it, and you can also take very, very precise measurements of graphical SWR values. And that graphical display gives you more information about the antenna than just an SWR, a bird meter can with forward and reflected power. Let me break. That meter can show you where your antenna is most resonant at, and that can help in terms of tuning that antenna quite a lot. And so the Site Analyzer does that too, but the Site Analyzer has some very sophisticated functions that can show you if there's a fault in your heliax or in your coax. It can show you where that fault is, if it's a short or an open, and how many feet away that defect is from where you're at that moment. So if you have a piece of heliax on a tower and that heliax has a fault in it, the Site Analyzer can show you where at on the tower that fault might be. And that can be a very useful tool to know, whether you need to climb the whole tower or if you just have to go part way up. Yeah, you're probably going to end up climbing the whole thing anyway, but at least you can get to where that trouble is and hopefully have some tools to make corrections. And there's other tools that we might have in terms of tests and analysis and troubleshooting. One of the tools that we use at some of our tower sites is a ground resistance meter. We're able to determine how effective the grounding system is at a station. And that can be a valuable resource in determining how good our lightning protection might be based on having a very low impedance path to ground. So if we take a lightning strike, we can be confident that the energy will be dissipated into the ground instead of our repeater.
Well, let's break that down a little bit, because I think in most cases, for a one-time use, it would not be economical for somebody to go ahead and purchase a ground resistance meter.
And it's not necessarily economical for somebody to purchase a Rig Expert or a Site Analyzer.
Correct. So
you can find those tools on eBay, kind of affordably, kind of. But I mean, I was looking at a 2002 model Site Analyzer, $900.
So the point I was about to make was, whether it be the Rig Expert, the ground resistance meter, while these tools are super helpful and super accurate, with a membership as vast as we have, chances are good somebody has one that you can borrow.
And that's a very good point.
Because in most cases, for your home base station, it's going to be a one-time use. Especially in the case of a ground resistance meter. You're going to set up your grounding grid, measure it, yep, I'm good, and then you don't need the tool anymore.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's not something you're going to continue checking. Once you've established that ground system, it should be in pretty good shape. So,
and then kind of the same thing with the Rig Expert. Unless you have a problem or think that something may have affected your antenna, or you make a change, it should be good.
That's true, but there are conditions that come into play. Let's break and we'll talk about that. So, I mean, you've got an antenna, and it's up there in the weather, the elements, day in and day out. It's there in bright, sunny, hot weather. It's there in cold, gloomy winter weather. It's there in dry weather. It's there in cold weather. And it's there in the wind and rain. And if it's properly installed, it should weather the elements very well for a good long time. But even properly installed, you may still have water intrusion in your connections. It happens. So even the most professionally installed antenna has that potential to require some kind of corrective maintenance or repair at some point along the way. And so these tools can be valuable not only in setting up an antenna, but doing some troubleshooting and diagnostics. If your station sounds great, performs well, you get great radio reports day in and day out, and then one day you don't, something may have happened.
Right.
It could be that a lightning arrestor has taken a hit. It could be that there's water in your antenna system somewhere, has penetrated a connector, has gone through the sealant that you've used.
And the other thing that happens that we've seen a few times is the fiberglass antennas that most of us use at our home base stations. Eventually the sun does start to break that down, and you could get a hairline crack in the tube allowing water in, and now you have a tube full of water in the antenna itself.
Yeah, and so some of these antennas are great antennas, but weather and time will take their toll.
That's right.
And so it may not be a forever situation. So if you're technically inclined and you like to have and use tools, then invest in the best tools that you can, and then when you have tools that you've upgraded from, you can loan out the Nano VNA or the SureCom, so that you can keep that rig expert close at hand. And if somebody wants to use the rig expert, then maybe you go there and take those measurements yourself with the more expensive tools. But definitely, if you've got those tools, help the membership out and try to take time and spend with folks. And it's a great opportunity to fellowship and to share the investment that you've made with the membership.
And the knowledge of using the tool.
And even termination tools. If you've got that custom LMR 400 cutter that trims the cable just perfectly for the fittings to go on, that's a great tool to have. But how many cables are you going to make versus how many cables can you make for friends and acquaintances throughout the network? And you don't necessarily need to buy the cable, but if you have that tool, you can help people out by learning how to terminate those cables and going out and doing it for folks.
Or making a repair to your own cable.
That's right.
If you get water in a connector, it may ruin the connector, but the cable may still be fine.
In some cases, the water gets past the
That's
connector,
right.
and will soak the dielectric in the cable. And in that case, I don't know. I mean, theoretically, that stuff will dry out over time, but
it's a crapshoot.
Yeah, I just, that's one of those, you set that cable aside for when you really got to have something. Let me break. So I think the questions that we'll ask tonight are, what kind of tools are you familiar with, and do you ever get the opportunity to break them out and help somebody with somebody else's station to get them up and on the air?
Or are you also not sure which tool you need, depending on what you're trying to test?
And that's another thing, because the rig expert is a little bit pricey, and maybe that's not the tool for you. There are other tools that will do a very similar function and cost a lot less. For instance, you can get the Nano VNA for 50, 60, 70 bucks. I think if you get the one without the battery, which spend the extra money to get the battery. But if you get the one without a battery, it's like $50-ish.
And just learn the procedure for calibration and setting it up. And the people who know how to do that, I've seen great success out of that tool.
It does a reasonably accurate assessment of your antenna system.
I just haven't drank enough smart water to figure out how to calibrate it.
Yeah, I think that stuff might be mislabeled. I'm not sure.
Well, there is that. That could be a strong possibility. So the first person on our list is Atlanta 403, Bobby. Bobby, what do you have for discussion tonight as far as RF tools?
I bet he's got a bottle of smart water.
Well, I'll tell you. When you start talking about bird meters and the rig expert, you had me excited in ways that I just can't talk about on the air. But
and
yeah,
yet you did.
No, I'm dreaming about getting my rig expert and my bird meter, and I didn't know about the bird site analyzer. I'll have to look into that, but sounds like somewhere along the line I got to hit the lottery and get a couple of grand to get those cool tools to play with. But yeah, right now I just play with the lowly Surecom, whatever it is, SW1 or 2, O2 or whatever it is. But it works for everybody's antenna that I mess with. So. But yeah, someday I want to have those cool tools to do, you know, even if I only use them 10 times the whole rest of my life, it'll just be cool having.
Yeah, and that Surecom, I don't remember, how much did the Surecom cost, Bobby? Do you recall ballpark what you spent on that Surecom?
Well, I bought one years ago when I first got into this, and it was cheap back then. I think, $30, $40. But I think it's up to about 50 or 60 now. I haven't priced it out. And they came out with ones with different connectors on, the PL259s, and they used to only be available with the N connectors, so if anybody's out there listening and buys one, just make sure you look up what connectors it's going to come with. Otherwise, you got to step over to adapter world. But yeah, when I first got mine, and it seems to work pretty good for what I've used it for, and tuned up Joe's radios and stuff. I think they were cheap back then, $30 or $40. But like I said, like everything, the price has gone up.
Yeah, and I think that Surecom is a pretty common device that'll measure forward and reflected power, and it will calculate SWR. Unlike the Bird 43, which is an analog meter with an analog scale, I love the way that an analog meter shows you the energy in a system. That it does that in a way that you just cannot see with a digital meter. But the Surecom will calculate SWR based on your forward and reflected power. So it kind of takes the guesswork out. So there's an element of precision that you get out of the Surecom that's not even available on the Bird 43. Now, I don't know what a Bird 43 costs to buy it new. I've never even looked to see what those things cost because they're readily available at Hamfests and online. You can buy them pretty easily for $150-ish for a Bird 43 on eBay. And then the slugs, you might find slugs for $25. Lately, they've been a lot pricier than that. I think the most I've paid for a slug was $85. Slugs should be in the $50-ish range for the most part. There's going to be some uncommon ones out there that we don't necessarily need for GMRS. And, you might find a 400 megahertz to 1,000 megahertz, 1,000 watt slug. And you might think, well, hey, that's great because, GMRS is in that frequency range. But we don't have anything that puts out even a tenth of that power rating. So when you go to measure a radio on that particular slug, you're barely going to see the needle move, even if it's an HT. And if it's mobile, the needle might move a little further, but still you're only looking at a very small part of the scale. And so the value is inaccurate and almost meaningless. So you really do need a 50 watt slug for mobiles and a 5 watt slug for HTs.
And even a 5 watt slug for checking your return power.
You can. If you're looking at reverse power, reflected power, you can pull that 50 watt slug out and drop the 5 watt in, and then you spin that slug around and then key the radio to see your reflected power. You just want to be careful about power levels and slugs, and
which way the arrow's pointing.
That's right, but they're great tools and they can provide a lot of information. So part of the conversation tonight is about some of these great tools that we've used, but also that there are affordable alternatives. So, like for instance, the kit that I have for LMR 400, the cable cutter was like $75. And, that's a bunch of money to spend on a tool that you're only going to use for making up a few cables. Maybe your money is better spent by buying pre-made cables. But then there's the argument, too, about whether or not the pre-made cables, they might not be as good as you think they should be. So you have to consider, where they come from, who makes them, what they're made out of, all those kind of things.
Well, the other thing, we got a break. The other thing to keep in mind with making your own cables with LMR 400 specifically, you have to watch out if it's copper shield or aluminum shield. Because if it's aluminum shield, you cannot use solder-on connectors. You have to get the right kind of connector for which cable you're using. So LMR 400 can be tricky to make sure you get what you need, and the tools are different based on what kind of shield it has.
Yeah, so and that also comes into play. If you buy these tools, they're oftentimes very specific to a particular brand and make of cable. So if you have LMR 400 tools and you buy a Chinesium knockoff variant, what is that, the LMT 400 that you can buy on Amazon?
Like they say, it's like LMR 400.
Right. You might not have very much success in using those trimming tools on that knockoff cable. So that's when I learned that LMR 400 is not always LMR 400. I got my hands on some of that cable and thought that I had good stuff, and soon learned that it wasn't the real deal. So it does. That's one of those things where you can't really save any money by saving money. You're really just throwing it away when you buy counterfeit LMR cable. Unfortunately, that's one of the more expensive things that we buy, but I recommend that you buy the name brand. And if you're going to buy it pre-made, buy it from some place like MPD Digital. They sell cable on the internet. You can get it through Amazon, or you can get it directly through their website. They'll ship it out to you within a day or two. And I've always had good success with MPD Digital. They'll even make the cable wrong if you order it that way.
What?
Yeah, they send you exactly what you order. So if you order the cable incorrectly, that's what they're going to send you.
Isn't that the case with pretty much any order? Like if you order a pizza wrong, you're going to get what you ordered.
Yeah, but it's a little bit more expensive than a pizza. So pay attention how you order that cable. And but in any case, so Bobby, other than the SureCom, do you have any other RF tools? Do you have any crimping tools for making cables?
No, negative on that. I agree with you. I get most of all my cables from MPD. I never had a problem with any of them. And the other thing I'd like to add, too, is with that SureCom, I know a couple of people, namely Atlanta 250, that keep them things online all the time. And I don't know if I trust a $50 SureCom meter on a $200 or $300 Kenwood or ICOM or any radio of value. So I've been trying to beat it into his head not to keep him in line all the time. But, some people don't always listen. So that's all I got to say. So you shouldn't keep those cheap Chinese meters in line with your radio. Back to you, Net Control.
Well, that's a good point, Bobby, and I'll go one further. When you're ordering cables, you should pay attention to all the terminations that your antenna system is going to require. So how many feet is it from your radio to the lightning arrestor? And how many feet is it from the lightning arrestor to the antenna? And what are the terminations on the lightning arrestor? What are they on the antenna? Are they male, female? Are they N? Are they 259, 239? What are the terminations on the back of your radio? And once you've made all of those determinations, those cable lengths, those cable terminations, then place your order with MPD Digital with that very specific information. You might want to add a foot or two to the cable length just to make up for any error and to allow for drip loops and things of that nature. It's always better to have a cable that's a little bit too long than one that's a little bit too short. And you want to, if you can order the cable with the right fittings on that come off of your radio, then that can maybe eliminate the need for an adapter to go from an end cable to a radio with a 239 connector on the back of it. So if you order the cable instead with a 259, even though we don't really like the 259s for UHF, if that's what's on the radio, you're going to use a 259 one way or another, even if it's an adapter. But every time you make a connection, there's a little bit of loss. So whether it's an adapter going from 259 to N, or whether it's a meter that you've stuck in line, you've made another set of connections to connect that device, or you've got extra adapters in your circuit, and all of those things can contribute to additional signal loss and elevated SWR. And the thing is, you don't see any effects of SWR between the radio and the meter. You only see between the meter and the antenna. So
the meter's not showing you loss either.
That's right.
So the meter's telling you the power going out and the power coming back, but it's not telling you what's lost.
That's right. So, you know, those additional connectors and things like that all contribute to an antenna system's loss. And it's always best to keep that path as clean as you can with the fewest breaks, the fewest adapters, the fewest terminations as possible. Let me break. All right, Bobby, that's good stuff, and you raised some very good points. Let's continue on. Next on the list is McDonough 45. Kai in McDonough is in and out tonight. That'll bring us to Chattanooga 118 Stewart in East Ridge. Stewart, do you have any questions or comments about RF tools? And what do you have? What do you like to use?
Not any questions particular. I have a nano VNA, which I like to use testing antennas and whatnot. I've also got a couple of, I think they're Surecom SWR meters, and an MFJ unit for 2 meters and lower, but it won't do the GMRS. But that's all I've got. Back to you.
Very good. Let me ask you, Stuart, because Bobby kind of mentioned too with the Surecom, you can get them now with end connectors and 239 and various connectors on them. Do they also come in various frequency ranges? I don't know very much about the Surecom, and you know I know like the Rig Expert pretty much goes from 0 to whatever model you purchase,
whatever you can afford, basically.
Kind of gives you the frequency range. So, I mean, the more money you spend, the higher the frequency range. To get to 600 megahertz, it required a pretty good investment. No, I don't do anything in 600, but that's what I needed to cover 460. So
those new Stick Pros are much more affordable than the full size. The Stick Pro you can fit in your pocket. It comes with a lanyard, so if you need to climb with it, you have it. But they're in the $300 range instead of the $600 range for the full size tool.
Oh, that's very nice. And that what is that, Bluetooth to your phone for a display?
So I think that's how you're saving money, because you're using your own screen from the phone.
Okay. Yeah, much smaller device too, so it's easier to have it with you when you're working on a mast or up on a tower. So Stuart, tell us, those Surecoms, do they have different frequency ranges?
Believe there is a distinction in frequency range. Usually, it'll, its HF maybe go up to 2 meters, but typically it's going to be higher than 2 meters or just 2 meters and upward. But I don't know all the particulars, so I'm not really the one to give those good judgments there. Back to you.
I'm looking.
All right, very good. Yeah, and that's something that is likely the case. You would have to, if you're purchasing one for GMRS, you're going to want to make sure that it's built to operate, in the 460 to 470 range, so that it will cover all the GMRS frequencies. And that's something you should pay attention to in any radio band. If you're buying test equipment for HF or for UHF or VHF, pay attention to the test instruments and what bands they're rated for. For instance, you can buy a maybe not today, but not that long ago, you could buy a Workman SWR meter for $15 or $18. The trouble is that particular tool is for CB radio and will not give you the truth in UHF for GMRS. So the meter is useless to us in the GMRS band, but if you're putting the CB radio in a semi-truck, you can't beat that. It's very inexpensive. It might not be the most accurate tool, but it's accurate enough to tell you whether or not you have a problem.
So I got it pulled up here, and for the YouTube folks watching at home, it's on the screen. The SW102, which is the Surecom with N and PL259 adapter, so it comes as a little set, does 125 to 525 megahertz. And then their SW33, which is their HT tester, if you care, also comes with a dummy load and some adapters, and that does 125 to 525 as well.
Oh, very nice. Okay, so it's something to pay attention to, and I think it was Stuart that mentioned the Nano VNA. I have a question for you about that. Did you buy the Nano that has a built-in battery, or do you have to provide it with USB, micro USB power whenever you use it?
My Nano VNA, and I don't remember which version it is because there's a slew of them, but it does have an internal rechargeable battery. It charges up with the USB plug, but I don't know when the last time I've charged it. I don't use it often, but I don't charge it often either, and it's nice not to have to be tethered to a power source.
Yeah, and that's probably the biggest difference, and why mine never gets used is because the one I have does not include a battery built in, so it has to be fed power through a micro USB connector in order to use it at all, and that's not super inconvenient. Now you can pretty easily get one of those little power banks and walk around, but then you've got the power bank, you've got the Nano, you've got the cord between the power bank and the Nano. If the cord jiggles just the right way, you lose power on the Nano. Spend the extra $12 or whatever it is and get the model that has a battery. I promise you.
There's like 10 different models of Nano VNAs now, ranging anywhere from $50 to $200 with all different bells and whistles.
So there again, depending on what features that you need, if you're just doing GMRS, make sure it covers those frequencies and make sure it has a battery. But if you're doing Wi-Fi stuff, or if you're doing Mesh-tastic, you're doing things in other frequency bands, you might want something that'll do much higher frequencies and might want to spend a few more dollars. But there again, the cost of entry to some of these tools is not super high. It's attainable for most of us. On the other side, if you really don't have the 50 or the $75 or whatever it might be to buy some of these inexpensive tools, hey, just ask. Somebody has already bought those tools and is just itching for a chance to break them out and show off the fact that they know how to use them. So we can share our tools and our knowledge and help evaluate your antenna system and help you make the best station that you can make. So good stuff. All right, thank you, Stuart. With that, I'm going to move on to Chattanooga 30, Jonathan in Hickson. We had a double during his check-in, but I definitely heard Chat 30. So, Jonathan, I don't know if you were in and out, but we've got you marked as in. And so at this time, we'll call on you to see if you have any questions or comments about RF tools or any ideas for tools that we should have that we haven't talked about.
Thank you, Justin. Apparently there is a echo on the network that checked into the Skywarn net on Tuesday. They also got me in there twice. So maybe tech support needs to look into this. Tools I've got a Radio Shack SWR meter for CB stuff that I bought in the very early early 90s, and I've probably used it once every 2 or 3 years since then. So I've got about 30 years of use out of that thing, and I don't think it was more than $20 or $30 back then. So I'm all about buying tools and equipment. As soon as I got into GMRS, got on the Facebook page and asked people about SWR meters and got a recommendation for a Iowa CN501, which is what's called a cross needle SWR meter, where you have two needles. One shows you the power you're transmitting into your line, or out, transmitting through your antenna, and then the other needle shows the reflected power. It has two scales. It does 0 to 20 watts or 0 to 200 watts. With a 40-watt transmitter that I've got, it's not ideal. I can't use it on the 20-watt range. On the 200-watt, the 40 watts is just barely enough to get a reading on it, but not enough to really get some good precision on it. I've seen a lot of people on both here on NGGMRS and some of the other networks and forums using the Surecom meters. Seem to be extremely popular, extremely affordable, quite well proven. I do wonder, in fact, I'm rather convinced that the Surecom tends to display a lower SWR than actual, because I've seen so many people posting pictures of SWRs of 1.01, 1.02, 1.03, and they're not using premium quality coax and antennas. So it's like, yeah, there's no way it's that good, but it's good enough. Break. For the money, Surecom's absolutely good enough. I bought a Nano VNA H4 with some adapters and cables and some stuff like that for $90 or $100 bucks, and it is an amazing tool for the money. A real vector network analyzer is a $5,000 to $20,000 piece of equipment. The Nano does the job for sure. There's a bunch of different brands. It's an open source project where a guy in Japan designed it, released the design. A guy in China saw the design and said, hey, I think I'm going to make some of those and sell them to people. Other people picked it up and made improvements. Somebody else got in and rewrote the operating code for it. So it's very much a open source worldwide project, which also means anybody who wants to can make one and call it a Nano VNA. But if they make it right, there's no concerns about it being a good one. I think they're all pretty much equal. Pardon me. For those who aren't familiar, the VNA is sort of like an oscilloscope in that it graphs the signals on a screen. It can record, measure, calculate up to 4 different parameters at a time. The way it works is, first you have to calibrate it. Then you tell it what frequency range you want it to test. So in this case for GMRS, I'll typically tell it to sweep from 460 megahertz to 470 megahertz. So I cover the entire spectrum we use plus a little bit on either side of it. Break. Then when you start actually doing the test, what the Nano does is over that 10 megahertz band is it basically sends out a little low power ping or transmission down the transmission line, and then measures the signal it sends out, the signal it sends back, and they'll do that depending what you choose, 100, 200, up to 400 times across that 10 megahertz sweep. And so rather than giving you an SWR reading at one specific point, say 462.65 megahertz, it gives you up to 400 readings across that range, and then it plots it as a graph, so you can see very clearly not just where your SWR is highest and lowest, but you might say the shape of the curve too. If you want to take the next step beyond the SWR meter, the VNAs the Nano VNAs are an amazing tool, definitely worth the money you spend on it. And if anybody in the Chattanooga region needs help with SWR meters, the VNA, please contact me. I'm Chattanooga 30. I've also got a pretty good kit of basically a universal adapter kit that will adapt just about any coax connector from and to any other coax connector. I've got cables, crimpers, stuff like that. I got a bunch of stuff for half-inch hardline because at my house, I got a long, narrow house, and the antenna had to go on the opposite end of the house of where I normally hang out. So I had to run 70 feet of coax, and I didn't want to. I live in a horrible location. I'm in a valley, and so I had to run 70 feet of coax to get the antenna. And where I live, I wanted every last possible milliwatt of power going out my antenna break. So because of that, and then I started looking at the price of an LMR 400 versus half-inch heliax, and it was like, well, the heliax is only a little bit more. I'm going to go ahead and get that. And I always buy extra cable. I always buy extra spare parts. So if anybody needs help with any of this in the Chattanooga area, please look me up. I also had to put my antenna up. I had to buy a 28-foot extension ladder to get up on the roof, and a few other little things. So if you all need help, please let me know so I can justify this cost. But thank you all very much, and back to net control.
Well, and that's a great point, Jonathan, to help justify, because, we have a passion for radio, and we're going to spend the money, even if we shouldn't. And so to help justify the cost, if we can break out these tools and help another person, diagnose, troubleshoot, make improvements to upgrade, their station, whatever the case may be. And I often say, mission number one, especially for new users, the first mission is to get on the air. All right. So whatever radio you have, whatever antenna you have, whatever coax you have, whatever grounding you have, get on the air. Then as we learn things about antennas, as we learn things about coax and heliax, as we learn about grounding, we need to make improvements to our stations so that we don't get blown up by lightning, so that our signal is the best it can be. So, okay, it may be that you've gotten on the air, but your signal is just barely readable. Well, congratulations, first of all, for getting on the air. But in order for people to have an interest in talking to you, they're going to need to be able to hear you clearly. And you're going to need to be able to hear them clearly. So if you've gotten on the air, but your station sounds noisy, you may need to make additional improvements right away. For the rest of us, maybe we can get on the air and we sound okay, but we know that we need to do something about grounding. We know that we need to do something about power. Whatever that might be, first we get on the air, then we make incremental improvements to our stations. And when it's time to make improvements to our antenna system, rather than spend all that money on tools, I'd rather see folks spend that money on the best antenna they can afford and have somebody with the tools come over and help them get that antenna system set up and working properly. Then, down the road, if after having seen the tools used, you want to be able to acquire them and have them for yourself, by all means. But for the new folks out there just getting started, I'd like to see you spend the money smarter and buy the best you can buy right out of the gate. So good stuff, Jonathan. Thank you for all of that, and thanks for offering to help out for folks that are in that general area. You might be surprised at the calls that you get. Next on the list, we have CW5, Cindy in Comer. Cindy, do you have any comments for the net? Any RF tools in your toolbox?
And we also need to know if CW4 is in or in and out. We missed that part when you checked in initially.
Good point.
Hey there, Justin. You're talking my language that last a little bit. Just getting on the air was the biggest struggle for us, and so we managed to cobble together a lot of stuff to make it happen. Thanks it happen. So he is in, by the way, so he'll be ready when I'm done, and probably have to explain a lot of what I'm about to say, but Frank, hang on. So we started out, one of the big hurdles that we had that we didn't really know we had was that we had the wrong kind of cable. We thought we had RG8, but apparently we had RG8X, and those are not the same thing. So once we figured that out, we got the RG8, our signal improved immensely. So that was one big hurdle that we managed to get over. And then we got the Yagi directional antenna and started playing with that, and that's really done wonders. I feel like we're pretty fortunate in that we have been able to hit Lula from our little fishbowl out here. That directional antenna about 37 miles away, so it's a pretty good shot to get it to Lula. And I'll break.
So the noise that we're hearing is packet loss.
Yeah. And then things that you wouldn't necessarily think that you would need for a radio, some of the things that I've observed have come in handy were a telescoping pool cleaning pole, which allowed us to raise and lower the antenna and turn it every which way to find the best signal. Of course, everybody needs zip ties for everything. And, and then water pipe insulation when you're running it through the window, the cable through the window. That kind of keeps everything nice and watertight and keeps the bugs out. And so that's one of the things that I found handy. So that's about it for me. Of course, y'all know I'm a newbie, so I don't know about all the technical stuff, but I've enjoyed listening to y'all tell me about it. So thank you. And I'll go back to
Well, that's great to hear, Cindy. And yeah, I mean, I think that we've all kind of been there at some point. Not quite sure. I mean, my first endeavor into setting up a station was pretty modest and rifled with small mistakes. Things that I thought that I knew from radio experience, on the railroad, and radio experience from my truck driving days. A lot of that stuff is in a different frequency band, and it doesn't necessarily apply one-to-one here. So I learned a lot of those same lessons along the way. Let me break. But, after having gone through a lot of those mispurchases and buying stuff that really was a waste of time and money, got a lot of adapters that really shouldn't be used because they're just cheap and noise riddled, and they adapters can contribute significantly to the amount of noise in your signal. High quality adapters cost a lot more. I don't really have any, but they're cleaner. They don't add as much noise to your signal, and don't offer as much signal loss. So that's one of the things that man, it's so easy to buy a $4 connector when what you really should be buying is a $16 connector. But it's just when you need 4 or 5 different connectors for different things, that adds up, and it's easy to spend $20, but if you're talking about spending $50 or $60, well, that hurts a little bit. So sometimes we can throw money away thinking that we're saving it, and I'm guilty of having done a lot of that. And things like knowing the difference between RG8 and RG8X, I don't know how to recommend. What do you tell people that are brand new? Because those are not obvious things. Those are things I think would trip up a lot of people.
Yes, and I think that's a valid topic that Cindy brought up, and I hate to use her as an example, but she fell for it, unfortunately. And I think that's why it's important to stress of trusted vendors, like vendors that we have where you can pick up the phone and say, I don't know what I need, here's what I have. And it's somebody that's kind of in your corner, not just trying to make the sale.
Well, that's a great point. It didn't even occur to me, but you do raise a great point, is that there is a source for good purchase recommendations right here within the network. And if we would just make that phone call and spend our dollars with those vendors, I think that in the long run, we wouldn't have a box full of cheap connectors that you really don't want to use.
Well, some of that too. I don't know if it's necessarily the bait and switch intentionally, but how many times do we shop for known items on Amazon or on the internet where just the description's wrong? So you think you're ordering the right thing, but that's not what you get.
Yeah, and a lot of times too, the picture in the description is far different from the item that they send.
Exactly. So are you getting what's in the picture, or are you getting what's in the description?
Yeah. So that's a good point. So, for those that are wondering just what the heck we're talking about chat radio. There's a banner behind me. Well, you can't see it from here. But chat radio in Chattanooga, Jim Gifford is a preferred vendor from North Georgia GMRS. And what we like about Jim is that he knows what works in GMRS, and he knows what you shouldn't use in GMRS. Let me break. And so, because he knows what our network is and what our expectations are for users on the network, he won't steer you into the wrong coax or the wrong radio or the wrong anything. As long as he understands what you're buying and what you're buying it for, he'll help you make smart purchases. And in the long run, you're going to save money because you're not wasting money on stuff that you find out later that you can't or that you shouldn't use. So that's one of the reasons that we prefer chat radio. And at some point, we hope to be able to offer another preferred vendor. So stay tuned for that announcement.
That goes back to what you said earlier, too, with not using adapters if you don't have to. If you got somebody on a preferred vendor on the phone, okay, I got this antenna, I got this radio, they can sell you the piece of coax with the correct ends already on it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be wait until the UPS man brings the piece of coax and then, oh, shoot, I need an adapter.
Yeah, unless you order it wrong.
Well, that's a you problem.
So there is that, and you may have to compensate for your own errors, but in circumstances where we have resources like chat radio, I think we do ourselves a big favor by going there first, and then if you feel like you need to shop around, at least you've got some education and some information, and that's the one thing that brand new users have a hard time getting hold of, and I know that I did. The research that I did put me on a wrong path time and time again. So I hear just what you're saying about not knowing the difference between you thought you had the good cable, but you didn't have exactly what you needed, and the difference might seem insignificant, but the result ends up being significant. So good stuff. Let's see what Derek has to say about all this. CW4, go ahead.
Where do I start? Well, I was gonna try to wow everybody until Julie stole my thunder with the Nano VNA. Learning curve's a little steep, but boy, is that a slick little gizmo. So I started looking at other things, soldering irons, voltmeters, all the usual suspects, and probably the one tool that gets used more in our particular case is the pencil and paper, and to write down all everybody's call signs, tack numbers, and kind of document and kind of get a feel for all these people you're going to meet. That has just been a lifesaver, and probably, you know, stepping back here. Let me let the repeater reset. Stepping back and kind of looking at the big picture, probably the absolute most useful tool that we've encountered thus far has been the North Georgia GMRS community and the radio peers. Man, oh man, just super fantastic. Everybody jumping in to help at every turn and try to help you troubleshoot your problems. And, you know, my better half, if she asks for one signal report, she must ask for 500. So I gotta hand it, you know, give credit where it's due. So I'm going to vote for the North Georgia GMRS community. For the North Georgia GMRS community is the top tool in our arsenal. So back to net control.
Well, Derek, I would have to agree, and the community that we have here is always been a very uplifting and supportive group of folks, and that's why, you know, one of my recommendations are that if you are going to invest in any of these expensive tools, you know, make that investment worthwhile by you know, paying it forward and helping other radio enthusiasts achieve the quality of station that you have. And, you know, that kind of, even though it's hard to make a justification on return on investment in terms of your own use, and it's not like it's a service that we can sell in a meaningful way. You know, if I could figure out how to make money doing GMRS radio stuff, that'd be great. But I love what I do. We all love the efforts that we put into the network and the activities that we're engaged in, and so we don't really think that much about how much money we spend, which might be part of our problem. But you can kind of rationalize and justify spending those dollars on expensive tools by knowing that you're going to use it not just for yourself but for others. But you touched on the nano VNA, and so some of the things that I find remarkable about the VNA in concept, because I don't really use mine very much. I don't really use it at all because I don't like the fact that it doesn't have a battery. But the way that device works is it's an SDR device. It's a software-defined radio. So as soon as signal comes into the box, that signal gets turned into a digital input. It's ones and zeros. It's sampled at a very, very high frequency, and so it's not processed like a radio is. It's processed differently, and because that processing is inexpensive and efficient and powerful, we have a really effective tool in a very, very low-cost package. And it may not give you the same readings and the same value as the expensive commercial-grade tools, but
it's going to be close enough.
We're dealing with analog radio here in GMRS. The vector analysis that you might use for digital broadcasting doesn't really matter here. So the effectiveness of a VNA in analog is tremendous compared to what it might be. If you're trying to use the VNA to line up microwave radios for commercial data transmission, you're not going to get by with a nano VNA. That's going to show more errors than your system even has. Let me break. I recently attended a seminar put on by Rode and Schwartz, and they were talking about some of these commercial scale VNA devices, and they had one sitting on a desk on display in the classroom while we were at, and you know, it's kind of a cool machine because it's got HDMI ports on it, so you can plug it into a monitor or a projector, And so they were able to display the screen of the vector analyzer on this giant projection screen behind the stage. And it was kind of neat to be able to see all the stuff that this machine is doing. It's a $50,000 machine. I mean, that's more than most of us are going to spend on a car. A lot more. So if you're not in a commercial application where you can justify a purchase like that, forget about it. And the difference in performance between the Nano VNA and that $50,000 Rode and Schwartz test instrument, in terms of accuracy and performance, is insignificant in purely analog radio. So the added capabilities that the Rode and Schwartz device have just don't apply to what we do. It's unnecessary here. We don't care how many bits are in a packet, and we don't care about how accurately we transmit those bits. This is analog waveform, and it's very simple radio stuff. So
I think you gave somebody in the chat a heart attack with that price tag on that tool.
Yeah, none of us are going to have. But you know, when I was looking at the site analyzers, and I had made mention of a 2002 device for $900. You can buy site analyzers, and so just like the Nano VNA. Okay, so you have a Nano VNA, and you break it out and you use it a few times over the course of a few years. So it's the same in a commercial application. On a railroad, we have some of the site analyzers, and they sit in a bag for most of their lives. All right, so the older devices that have NiCad batteries in them, you can't show up at a site and expect it's going to work because the battery's going to be dead. All right, if you know you're going to be taking the device out to the field tomorrow, you better put it on the charger tonight so that it's ready. Otherwise, you better plan on having power there to plug it in. But you can buy those tools that are from the 80s and 90s for just $200, $300, $400. And they're just as effective and useful today as they were when they were made. And folks, we're dealing with analog radio here. We don't need all the bells and whistles that $50,000 machine has. That used, aged, vintage piece of electronics, high quality commercial electronics, will last us a lifetime and can be purchased for a lot less than even the cost of a new rig expert. Let's break. So if those commercial test instruments are the direction that you would like to go in, that stuff is out there, and it can be found, and sometimes it can be purchased affordably. That $50,000 Rode and Schwartz device in 30 years is going to be sitting in a warehouse someplace, and it'll get surplused for $500, $600, $700. It's a matter of being at the right place at the right time to be able to find stuff like that. So be on the lookout if that's what your interests are. All right, next on our list we have, I'm probably not going to say this right, but I'm going to try. Sabatino from Fort Oglethorpe. I think he said, where did he say he was at? Near Fort Oglethorpe?
It was near Fort Oglethorpe, or did he say he lived in Ottawa?
That's what it was, Ottawa. All right, let's see if Sabatino has any input for us tonight on RF tools.
Actually, this is very, very interesting. I've been listening to you guys for a couple of months, and this is the first time I've had any input. And I just find it amazing what you guys have accomplished with this repeater system. I've been in commercial radio my whole life, 50 years, and what you've done is a feat. I mean, a real amazing feat. So I'm just proud to be part of the network. I'll be joining very soon.
Oh, that's fantastic, Sabatino. And yeah, all the credit for what this network is today goes to our founder, Gary Beckstead. This is something that he built from a passion and a hope, and he made personal investments in equipment and in site agreements and relationships to be able to acquire those sites. And he continues today, building relationships, acquiring sites, acquiring equipment in the most affordable way that he can. And so that's where the credit goes in terms of building out this network. And the linking system that we use is a what's the word I'm looking for? It's a modification. We've taken a really good linking system and just ruined it.
Well, that's one way to put it.
Because you can't use it anywhere else. But it is very customized to what we do. It's based on All-Star, but it's not All-Star anymore. It's very, very different now. And that's something that's kind of evolved with some very capable individuals along the way. And currently, John Wolf, Atlanta 810, is our network engineer responsible for the linking electronics and configurations. And then the rest of us are just a bunch of volunteers that help out wherever we can.
And try not to break stuff.
Try not to break stuff. And I mean, just tonight, we don't even know what we broke.
I think we fixed it.
Well, I don't think we have. I think we still have trouble, but we're gonna hope that we get by.
My YouTube stream is going. The chat's working. So whatever you broke is on you. YouTube is flawless.
We'll see what happens as it plays on. But I appreciate your comments, and as a commercial radio engineer, we may lean on you for some consultation along the way. So be prepared for that.
I'm actually a hack engineer. I'm more of a broadcaster, and I have some powers that you guys may want to utilize. We'll talk about that later. But I don't think people quite understand the difficulty in operating in this frequency, because when you're dealing with FM radio, it's a much lower frequency. It's more forgiving. When you get up into the 400 megahertz, there's nothing forgiving about it. And I'm hearing most people sounding really good. And this is just the common person, average engineer. And that just tells me that you guys, and I've looked at your sites and everything you're doing, and Facebook and YouTube, and it's just amazing. I'll be privileged to be a part of it and help any way I can. But you mentioned connectors. You have to invest in good stuff. That is so important. The investment, and everybody thinks it's about wattage. It's not necessarily about wattage. Good antenna, height,
and timeout timers.
And a good microphone, WSCV 660.
Well, yeah, and that's like I've explained this evening. That's a lesson that I personally own. Is the cheap connectors.
And the right genders of the connectors.
Yeah. So buying the right connectors, and buying the, you're just throwing money away when you buy the cheap stuff. It really, truly are. And my advice would be this: if you've got a station that's operating today, and you know that the coax needs to be upgraded, wait. Take whatever time you need to accumulate the funding that you need to buy the right cable with the right connectors, and just make that upgrade one time. Once you have good quality cables and connectors in that antenna system, you'll be looking at other stuff to upgrade next time. And that might be your lightning protection, your grounding system. That might be a better microphone on your radio. It might be a better radio. So many of us come into this and we don't know where to start for a radio. And so you start poking around on Amazon, or you start poking around on eBay or the internet. And a lot of us fall into the, let's just get the Bofang radio and get on the air. And I'm an advocate of that. Get on the air. That's mission number one. But once you've done that, when it's time to start looking at your next radio, and to kind of piggyback on the comment that Sabatino said, this network sounds good, mostly because this network consists of good radios. And the repeaters are all commercial grade, first class, professionally and commercially installed radios.
And tuned to the frequency.
They're properly tuned. They're maintained properly with a very well-tuned antenna system. And, you know, one of the first things we look at when we go to a new repeater site is grounding. And if the grounding is not up to par, we will either walk away or we will take a look at what it's going to take to make the grounding adequate for a proper radio station install. So that's not something that we take lightly. Grounding is so vitally important in a quality radio system. As a commercial radio station that all of our GMRS repeaters are, we probably invest a lot more in grounding than most average users will on their own stations. But let's not overlook that when we're thinking about making improvements to our station, because it doesn't have to be expensive. And as Sabatino says, quality connectors really do truly make a difference. And it's a lesson that I own, and hopefully I can save you a few bucks. Let's break and we'll go ahead and move on.
I would say grounding is probably the most important thing, because lightning mainly starts to sound up. Good grounding will not only prevent harmonic humming, but it will actually protect you. And I can tell you, I mean, terms of service, you guys were talking about making sure that radio. I think that's really important. Now it's so inexpensive in station. I mean, I've picked one up with his radio under $50. This thing would have been several $100. Just a base medium FCC-certified radio. But yes, grounding is everything. It's everything. So
1 hour, 30 minutes.
I purchased 300 feet of camping cable that was cheaper than RGA. RGA cable is very good. If you're looking at getting cable, let me recommend take a look at the half inch.
You know, unfortunately, Sabatino, I don't know if you've changed your operating position or what happened, but those last two transmissions were mostly noise. We heard you make a comment about quality grounding, but I didn't get the context of that. I think I heard you make mention of an investment of $150, but I missed the context of that. So if you'll go back to the YouTube channel and play back it, what's the timestamp?
Pretty much an hour and a half into the live stream. You can hear where you started good and strong, and then it just went downhill to about the 1 hour, 38-minute mark.
So you'll be able to listen to all of your transmissions as we hear them, and you'll likely be able to determine what changed between the first couple and these last two, and make some improvements to your station as we go. But glad to have you along. Looking forward to your membership, and
he may get a kick out of coming to see us at Jeep Fest too. I know it's a little bit of a haul from him from Ottawa, but
all right, everybody that's not going to Jeep Fest, raise your hand. I think everybody's going. I can't imagine anybody
he's
that wouldn't.
new. He may not know about it.
Go. Well, all right. Well, yeah. Well, look into Jeep Fest. There's going to be some Facebook announcements, and we talk about it every week. And
Labor Day weekend, planning on heading down to Jasper, Georgia.
And if you want to volunteer, and this goes for anybody, if you want to volunteer to help out at Jeep Fest, what's that email address? Jeepfest at?
Very convenient. Jeepfest at NGGMRS.org.
Very good. All right. So send us an email at that. We're organizing our volunteer list. So if you don't get a response right away, it's not because we are ignoring you. We're just trying to make all the pieces fit. Have you got all the pieces fitted?
Sort of. And if you do send an email, please include the days that you're available. So there's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday for the event. if you have to work and can only make it Saturday and Sunday, or if you have church and can only make it Saturday, the information of the days you are available is helpful as well.
Yeah, that's part of the trouble that we're having and sticking all the pieces together is we're not sure about availability. But to go ahead and if that's something that interests you, if you just want to see Vanguard in person, plan on the Jeep Fest, and we might even have some volunteer spots available. Have we filled up the net control operations yet?
We're still juggling pieces.
So we might be there. I'm not entirely sure yet. But speaking of net control volunteers for Jeep Fest, let me go ahead and acknowledge.
You need to break.
Let me break. And my log is messed up. Why? Oh, there we go. All right, next on our list we have Dallas 64. Josh in Dallas is in and out, and that'll bring us to Atlanta 250. Dana in Dahlonega. Dana, do you have any comments for quality RF tools?
Well, good evening, guys. No, I really don't have much to add to this. The only thing I can say is anything that you know to make your RF signal better or the best that it can be. Like I just recently purchased the Heil headset, but anything you purchase you can almost count as a tool that'll make your RF experience better. So everybody has to watch their pennies, buy what they can afford, and but I do believe in research and planning, and look at things as an investment versus just buying cheap. So that being said, I'll turn it back to you guys.
Well, that's a great point, Dana, and that also contributes to tools in a way. So the microphones that we use, the headphones that we use, the headphones serve a very specific purpose, and we were just discussing headphones in here just before the net because we're coming into a season where it's not really practical to leave the doors to Vanguard open and enjoy that cool evening air because there are bugs. And the air's not that cool. So that being the case, we may soon have to go back to using our Heil headsets and taking the boom microphones down. We'll use the microphone that's a part of the Heil headset. Those are great mics, and they sound really good. The advantage to the Heil headset versus having an open-air mic like the one you see me at right now is that we can have the air conditioning running. Those mics will reject that background noise really, really well, and those headsets will reject that external noise almost completely. And so the air conditioner can be on and making all the noise that it makes and make it a comfortable space in here, as it will be for Jeep Fest. The air conditioner will be on for that event. But instead of having an open-air environment with monitor speakers and an open-air microphone, we'll use noise-canceling microphones that are a part of our Heil Pro 7 headsets. And Vanguard is equipped with the headset cord already incorporated into the studio. So if you have the Heil Pro 7, you can just show up with your headphone and plug right into what we have here. There's no complicated figuring out where this goes and where that goes. It's just one cord that plugs into your headset. The microphone cord and the headphone connections are all in there, and it's very, very simple. And your headset will work at any of the I think it's 5 stations that we have configured for that operation. So yeah, that's another great tool. And even the microphones. So we've made investments along the way in various microphones for various applications. We've tried microphones that work. We've tried microphones that work well. We've tried microphones that work so well they hear everything. And because they hear everything, we can't use them because we do need a certain amount of rejection. We want to try to reject some of the external noises and some of the things that we don't necessarily want going out over the air, like the air conditioner noise. So various microphones have various performance points, and that's a topic that we will be covering at some point soon. But yeah, all of these are tools. So that's a great point, Dana. All right, with that, we're going to continue on with Chattanooga 175. Thad in Spring City is in and out. And we have CW33 Tom in Bogart is also in and out. Brings us to McDonough 22 Tim in Stockbridge. Tim, do you have any RF tools that you carry in your radio toolbox?
Well, good evening, gentlemen. McDonough 22 here. I don't really have much to add to what's already been said. My system is kind of minimal, being as close to the repeater down here as I am, and being able to get on the air with a little 20-watt radio and a magnet mount antenna sitting over in the corner. I don't need a whole lot, but I do have, I'm another one of the users of the Surecom SW102 SWR meter, and from my experience with it, I think I've been using it for about three and a half years now or so. I checked around with several other members before I bought it. I think Mr. Houston 780 was one, and maybe Bobby and a couple of other people, and it seemed like quite a bit of a few people on the network used those, and I sure couldn't afford a bird meter or anything like that. So the Surecom SW102 is going right now between, depending on what seller that you buy it from, $55 to around $59 or so. And it's a wonderful little tool, and as has already been mentioned, it gives you the forward power, the reverse power. It shows the frequency that your radio is transmitting on. So if your frequency is off by just a tiny little bit, it's going to show up on that digital screen there. And so got a number of years. I think I've maybe recharged mine twice since I've had it, and it was not giving me any indication that it needed a charge. I just thought, it sits in the drawer for most of the time, so I thought I'd better go ahead and charge it up every once in a while, just periodically when I think about it. I'll plug it up to the USB, like a cell phone charger, and let it charge, till the little green light comes on, and then put it back in the drawer. So, but it's a vital tool to have some kind of SWR meter for sure, for your radio. I check my mobile with it occasionally because it rains, the weather comes, and occasionally get moisture in the NMO mount. Have to take that out, dry it out, clean it every once in a while, check the SWR, put everything back together. Same thing indoors, even though there's no weather inside here. Every couple of months or so, I'll just get the meter out and check everything, make sure it's running right. So, because I don't want any damage to the radio. But anyway, great net tonight, gentlemen. Lots of good information. I appreciate all the comments, and everybody have a good evening. I'll throw it back to net control.
Well, good stuff, Tim. And yeah, I'm glad to know that that you're able to make use of that Surecom. And like everybody else, you've only used it a few times. You've only charged it a couple of times. I think charging it periodically is a good idea. But with the lithium-ion batteries today, they're a lot more forgiving than the old NiCad batteries. Man, if you didn't have the NiCad charged every few weeks, it would go flat dead. And that tool would be the other problem with the NiCad batteries. You can't just leave them on the charger, because then they would burn up. They would be no good at all in fairly short order. The batteries that we have today have onboard battery management chips that maintain a charge rate and monitor a discharge rate, and will protect the battery from overcharging. And the smart chip that they put in these batteries today would have been so wonderful to have had in the NiCad era. But I don't believe during the NiCad days there really was any true battery management. I think that the chargers were very much like the lead-acid chargers. They just output a specific voltage, regardless of what temperatures and conditions might have been. And I think those are the things that went towards shortening the longevity of NiCad batteries, overcharging them, and the self-discharge rate that a NiCad has. If it's not being used, it discharges at a particular rate that will make the battery ineffective, within a couple of weeks' time. So we've come a long way, and something that we very often take for granted. But yeah, I think, if you just throw that thing on a charger every now and then, should be ready to go. And if it's not, I don't think it'll take very long for a lithium-ion battery to take a charge. If you had to take a break for an hour and let that thing charge up, it would probably be enough to get you back in business. So good stuff, Tim. All right, and with that, what a lucky thing that he can sit in an easy chair with an HT and come across the network and sound as good as he does. But
well, and I'm not trying to single anybody out, but I do think it's important, because we were just discussing this before the net, especially on the Facebook post, when you're making recommendations to folks for equipment, keep that in mind. And Tim is a great example of this. Not all of us are that fortunate where we can be a mile or two from the repeater.
That's right.
So if you're making an equipment suggestion, especially on the Facebook post to a new user, I think it's very important to get that in context. For example, somebody in Helen, Georgia is going to have a lot harder time getting into any repeater than Tim would be from his easy chair down in Stockbridge.
Well, and that's a great point. And then also, while we're on that deviation from our primary subject, let me break. That is an important thing to consider is the context that you're operating from. So Tim may be able to use, and I know for the longest time he used I think it was a BTEC GMRS V1, and that was his exclusive radio for quite some time. And eventually he upgraded into other radios. I'm not sure specifically what his arsenal consists of today, but the fact that he was able to get into the repeater network with such a modest radio and perform so well for so long doesn't mean that everybody else can. So when you're making a radio recommendation, bear that in mind, is that a modest radio can only do so much. And so in order to be able to make that marginal trip from a tough spot, you might need a radio with a tighter output and less deviation. A radio that has a signal that's putting more energy into the intended band and less energy being splashed out on the skirts. So I'm talking about commercial radios. I'm talking about Part 90 radios, Kenwood, ICOM, Motorola, Harris, the like. Those radios are built to a better standard and will perform in cases and situations where the BTEC radios and the shouldn't radio, those radios are built very inexpensively. They're basically SDR radios. The performance just isn't going to be there in marginal situations. And the other thing the other point I want to make, because this is kind of relevant to what I've been hearing on the network lately. If you're using one of those modest radios and somebody comes on the air and asks for a radio check, if no one else is answering them, then I want to encourage you to go ahead and make that response and give them an answer to the sound of their signal, but also identify the fact that you're on an HT. And if you're hearing everybody with noise, make that mention. I hear you, you're kind of noisy, but that's what I hear from everybody. Because if you tell somebody that they have a noisy signal, but it's really your radio and your location, you may encourage someone to try to fix a problem that they don't have. So pay attention to your operating circumstances and conditions when you're making a response to a radio check. So that's a completely different rabbit hole than our topic tonight, but I wanted to get that one out there. Jeff raised a good point too about consumer grade radios. Oftentimes may perform well in the right circumstances, but in challenging circumstances, they're just not going to have the edge. Next on the list, we have Cades Cove 80, Eric in Rockwood. Eric, what kind of radio tools have you collected along the way? All right. Well, Cades Cove 80 said that he was in, but he might be busy at the moment with a delivery or something of that nature. So we'll circle back to Rocky here in just a little bit. For now, let's go ahead and leave him as checked in so that we don't miss him. But I want to come back to him here after we get through these through a few more check-ins. Next on the list, I have Atlanta 75. Harry in Marietta is in and out. Atlanta 557, Ed in Kennesaw, also in and out. Gainesville 76, John in Gainesville, in and out. Dallas 290, Isaac in Dallas is in and out. Chattanooga 84, Jim in Hickson, in and out. Gainesville 58, Jonathan in Oakwood, in and out. And that brings us to Noonan 95, Philip in Noonan. We had a tough time copying you earlier, Philip, so if you would find the best operating position that you know that you have.
He had a good strong signal. We had low audio with Philip.
Okay. And talk nice and loud into your microphone so we can be sure and catch your comments. I think he's a relatively new user, so he may not have much in the way of radio tools, but maybe something along the way has piqued his interest. Do you have any questions or comments for tonight's net?
I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, that was great. Good audio. So come on back with that.
Part of the network for the last few years. I just haven't been super active. Life has gotten in the way a little bit, but I do have a couple of questions, if you don't mind. Break. I am curious about the good quality lightning arrestor and where to find the quality connectors, adapters that you were talking about earlier.
Well, those are two very good questions. And so, you know, the exposure that I have in commercial radio is around, you know, the railroad. So we have a lot of radio installations. All of our signal bungalows along the right-of-way are equipped with a data radio. And all of our vehicles are equipped with a two-way VHF voice radio. And we have the nation's largest privately owned active microwave system. So we have microwave radio across 22 states. That is our data backhaul for most of the railroad. So there's a lot of applications of radio, and these are all commercial installations on commercial rated equipment and towers, et cetera, just like any radio station or TV station or public service station might be equipped. These stations are all equipped the same way. And in every one of those locations and every one of those radios, I see a polyphaser brand lightning arrestor used for lightning protection. I also see that same polyphaser in a lot of public service installations where you have police and fire and 911 radios. Polyphaser is what you see the most. There's also a high-quality lightning arrestor made by a company called Alpha Delta. They're a little more affordable than polyphaser. They're very good devices, but if you're talking about the best, I think you're talking about polyphaser. And you're probably going to spend $100 to $150 on a polyphaser. They've really gone through the roof in price as of late. They used to be in the very consistently the $75, $85 range, but they're much more expensive now. And in terms of adapters and connectors, I would recommend that you would order those kind of devices from somebody like Chat Radio or a company called MPD Digital down in Albany, Georgia. Elcom is another source for Tesco, is another source for high quality radio equipment. The problem with Elcom and Tesco is you can spend $70 on a $20 connector. So they sell to the commercial market, and they expect commercial accounts. So when you buy from somebody like MPD Digital, you're going to be buying at a much more competitive price point, or even Chat Radio. You'll do well buying components from those places. The problem with buying those adapters and things from Amazon is very rarely do you get a quality component. It may look like an Andrews, or it may look like CommScope, it may look like a brand name, but when it arrives, you can tell that it's very cheaply chromed, and instead of using a high quality Teflon dielectric, they're using plastic, and so the impedances might not even be right. And that's something that it's not easy to tell by looking at a connector what kind of an impact it's going to have on your signal. But if the impedance in the connector is wrong, it can have an impact on your entire antenna system. So finding a source for quality connectors is very important. So great questions. Did you have anything else for us tonight? Philip, did you have anything else for us tonight? Did I time out on Noonan?
No. I hope you can copy me pretty well. I think I fixed my issue with the microphone, but I was curious about those two things. My father-in-law is actually also going to be putting up his own private repeater down in Navarre, Florida, and he was also concerned about a good lightning arrestor along with myself, even though I'm actually super close to the Noonan repeater over near Gary's. But he bought a really nice repeater and wanted to protect it, so I can understand.
Oh, very good. Yeah, we're able to hear. I mean, we've got a good clean signal, but your audio is just very low. So what we've been doing is pulling the gain up on the mixer for that channel each time that you key up, so that we can get the audio up above the to a level that we can hear. So you're well above the noise floor. It's just that it's just low, and we can crank it up and be able to get your audio, but it's much lower than everybody else's. So that is something that hopefully you can make a correction on and be able to use that radio well. The other thing that you might look, and I can't tell from where I'm at, but sometimes people hold the radio out at arm's length. And even if whether it's a mobile or an HT, you need to get that radio right up close. And if you're watching us on YouTube, you can kind of see how close I am to the microphone here. And that's really about the proximity that you're going to want, whether it's a mobile radio with a hand mic or an HT. In both cases, you want that radio pretty close to your mouth, because those radios are made, those microphones are made to reject noise. And so they're good at picking up close audio, and are also good at rejecting distant audio. So they have what you might think of as a proximity effect. The closer you are to the microphone, the more sensitive the microphone appears. But once you get away from that microphone, and it doesn't take a lot, you can just move away from that microphone a little bit, and it has a big impact on your audio level. But when you get right back into that microphone where you need to be, then you get into that sweet spot where the audio level becomes right. So consider that, and maybe that will fix part of the problem. Otherwise, you might need to take a look at the gain settings on the radio. And don't like to recommend that, because that can lead to other problems. If you turn the gain up too much, you can get into a distorted signal by overmodulating.
And you're also bringing the ambient noise up as well.
Yeah, so there's a balance, and so you need to speak with some force into that radio and get nice and close to it to make sure you've got a good pickup. When they show radios in the movies and the guy's holding it out at arm's length or he's holding it upside down, or that's the movies. That's not really how radios work. But glad to have you along tonight, and we look forward to hearing from you again. Good luck on that repeater install. And where did he say that was in Florida?
I didn't catch the city.
So tell us again where that repeater is going to be, and what's the plan for that repeater? Is that just going to be a community machine?
I switched back over to a hand mic. It's Kenwood 880. But yeah, Navarre, Florida. It's about 4.5 hours. It's between Pensacola, what is that, and Destin. It's between those two places. It's kind of a smaller. Nobody really comes there to vacation a lot. There are some, but it's not as commercialized as like Panama City Beach or Destin, anything like that. It's really nice and quiet, and we like to go down there and visit quite a bit.
Well, Philip, I heard you say you switched over to a hand mic and your audio came up substantially. So now that we can hear you good and loud, what were you trying to use before? Was it a Kenwood desk mic? Is that what you were having issues with?
Yes, it's the Kenwood MC60. It was actually given to me, and I was trying to make use of it, but I don't think I've figured out all the little switches and everything that are on it, and I'll have to play with it on Simplex a little later and see if I can't get it worked out.
Yeah, so that's a good thing to know. You have a good, strong signal. We can hear you good and loud right now, which means your radio and your antenna system is perfect. So it's just going to be that desk mic you're going to have to get worked out.
Yeah, and desk mics are great, but hopefully you can get the settings correct on that and be able to make use of that. But the hand mic definitely sounds much, much better.
I appreciate it. But yeah, so I'm going to try to help him out with his install on that. It's I forget what brand it even is, but it's ICOM, the ICOM repeater that he picked up for a pretty good price. So I'm going to try to attempt to help him along with that.
Very good. Well, that should be a good machine, and hopefully that will become a successful repeater. All right, Philip, well, thank you for that. And with that, we're going to continue on. We have Atlanta 454. Stephen in Lilburn is in and out, as well as Atlanta 453. Janine, also in Lilburn, is in and out. Atlanta 637. Dave in Kennesaw, also in and out. Atlanta 102, Jim incoming, is in tonight. Jim, do you have any questions or comments for RF radio tools?
Well, I have one comment. I thought it was a brilliant comment previously, and I wish I could give the attribution where it belongs, but the notepad and writing down the tax signs of the folks that are extremely helpful and knowledgeable on this network has been, in my 3 or 4 months of being a member, one of the most productive things that I found. I'll break. So my question comes in the form of a protocol question. So I've got my SureCom and my Nano. I built my J-Pole antenna. I've got it digitally tuned in, but now I want to see which repeaters I can hit. So from a not being that person on the network, what's the best time to do tests, like reaching out to far repeaters and seeing if you can get a response?
Well, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of people that are monitoring pretty much day in and day out. My advice would be don't overwhelm the network at any one time. So, for instance, if you want to make a test for a distant repeater, whether you're using an Omni or a Yagi, get your equipment set up the way that you think you need it to be, and make a few checks over the course of 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then leave it alone. Make your notes, document your findings, and then if you want to make additional tests, wait a while, a couple hours or even another day, and come back and configure your system to make contact on a different distant repeater. When you're making those distant contacts, your signal strength may be low. You may be very noisy, staticky. That can be annoying to listen to for any length of time. So keep your transmissions relatively short and to the point, and if you're not getting a response, it's a good indication that you're not making the repeater. The other thing that you might do is when you're making those call outs, before you start, bring Zello up on your phone and have it there and playing. Turn the volume way down or leave the phone on your desk or someplace out of sound space. And then you can make that call out and go back and listen to what you sounded like on Zello and make a determination if that's going to be a useful repeater for you to use. When you're choosing the repeaters that you want, to program to have in your army of local repeaters, stick with the best one, and then switch to an alternate from time to time, just to make sure you can still get it. But don't be on the alternate most of the time. You want to figure out which one is your best one, and you want to spend most of your time there, because the quality of your audio signal matters to everybody on the network that's listening. And to artificially degrade that by using a marginal repeater when there's a good one nearby becomes annoying for people to listen to. Does that make sense?
That absolutely makes sense, and I certainly appreciate it. Ironically for me, the one that I live in the shadow of is Ball Ground, which typically isn't networked, but I'm about 5 miles from that one, so normally I just hit flagship. But I have been curious about hitting other sites, and you answered that perfectly, so thank you very much. And awesome net tonight, guys, and thank you for battling through the struggles, and this has been a lot of fun and very informative.
Good stuff. Well, glad you tuned in tonight, Jim, and look forward to hearing you on the air again and again. Next on our list, we have Atlanta 26 Flip in the beautiful Druid Hills. He might be in, he might be out, but I've got a feeling he's hanging out just itching to come on the air. Flip, let's talk about some of your RF radio tools.
Hey guys, I was about to go to bed, but no, really, I wanted to talk a little bit about crimpers, because we talked a lot about connectors tonight, but to me, crimpers are one of those annoying tools that you spend a lot of money on and you only use a few times, and then you put it in your bag of tricks and you don't use it a whole lot more, but they're so important, and they are so helpful too, right? So I was making a quick list of the various crimpers I have. I have lots of electrical wire crimpers. I have Anderson power pole crimpers, which is a special crimper for power poles to connect power lines. I have various coax and LMR size coax, different size crimpers. I have Ethernet crimpers. I have telecom crimpers, and then shrink wrap, which I think is important, and also silicone, self-fusing silicone rubber tape is one of those secret things to know about when you're connecting something out on the outdoors, like on the bottom of your antenna, and you want to make sure water doesn't get into it. But crimpers is a big deal, and I was wondering, maybe we should start like a list of who has what crimper within our group, so that when you need that particular crimper, you don't have to go buy it. You can just send somebody a note and borrow it. I don't know. That would be the way to go, I think. Back to you guys.
Well, I think that's a great suggestion, and I think the best way to manage that information is just on the Facebook page. If you know that you're going to be making up some cables, just make a comment on the Facebook page that, hey, I'm going to be ordering some LMR 600. And does anybody have the tools to make that up? And hopefully somebody in the group will chime in and say, yeah, I've got that stuff. Where can I meet you at? Or, maybe you'll be the one that specializes in 600 and everybody else has 400, or maybe you have the tools, but the person that is asking for them is just too far away. So there could be a regional issue as well, where somebody in the Chattanooga region might have the tool, but if you need that tool in Druid Hills, it's maybe too far to justify making that trip. Maybe it's not, but crimpers, that is, cheap crimpers are wasted money, just like cheap connectors, and they don't make a firm bite on the connector, and those connectors, they slip off, and now you've wasted the connector and you've wasted the tool. So it's really frustrating when you come up with a crimper that doesn't make a good, strong crimp. After you've made that connection, you should be able to grab that cable with one hand and grab the connector with the other hand and pull on it as hard as you can, and that connector should not move. If it's installed correctly, that connector will not move. Hate to do that, because how many times have we done that and the connector comes off? Now you got to start over. And maybe the connector is okay, but the tool is junk. Maybe the tool is okay, but the connector is junk. That's just one of those things where we don't save anything by buying cheap connectors and cheap tools. So my advice in that circumstance is if you don't have enough money to buy the right tool, then let's just put it off for a couple of weeks, put a couple more paychecks in the bank, add a few more dollars to your budget, and then buy the tool or buy that cable or those connectors. I think it's better to wait and buy the better part than it is to go ahead and push forward when we're not ready, when we don't have the budget to spend on the better tools. But and the other comment about making, having a tablet and a pencil, making notes during a net like this, or making notes of call signs and TAC numbers that you hear on the air. One of the things that I've learned is that just the act of writing something down does a lot to commit that, whatever that something is, to memory. If you think that you'll remember it, but you haven't written it down, you're probably not going to remember it. Whereas you may not even have to look back at the note, but having gone through the exercise of making the note ingrains that item in your mind and makes it easier to recall. So for that reason, I think it's a great idea to keep pen and paper handy near your radio station so that you can take notes and that you can jot down call signs and TAC numbers and other information that you find interesting along the way.
You timed out, I think.
All right, I'm told that I timed out. Flip, did you catch all that, or did I drop out partway through?
No, that was good. Thanks, Justin. And thank you also for, you loaned me, years ago, you loaned me a great SWR meter, and that sort of started me on the road to understanding that having really good tools is an important part of this hobby, and so I appreciate that. But anyway, yeah, back to you. Have a good night. Thanks. WREB 450 Atlanta 26. Back to you guys.
Ah, yes, the parking lot at the Varsity. What'll you have? Yeah, I recall, and glad you were able to make use of that, and I'm glad that it inspired you to collect your own collection of tools. And yeah, I'm really pleased with the investment that I've made in tools, and it brings me a lot of joy to be able to break those tools out and put them to use. So good stuff. All right, let me go ahead and continue on. Next on the list is Atlanta 256. Chuck in Dawsonville is in and out, as well as Gainesville 417. William in Auburn, in and out. And that'll bring us to Chattanooga 69. Ronnie in Las Vegas. Ronnie, do you have any questions or comments for the net? What's in your RF toolbox?
Good evening, Justin, Jeff, everybody else on the net. I have over 1,000 tools in my box, buddy, and that's everybody in the network. Everybody's helped me out, and I've tried to return the favor. Something I haven't heard mentioned is, if you can put it off for a week or two, you might be able to meet somebody at one of our regional luncheons and get the tools that you need to get your system correct.
Well, that's a great point, Ronnie, and you're right. There are thousands of tools in all of our toolboxes. We have a huge resource of advice and expertise and knowledge and experience within the network. We have folks that have a depth of knowledge in many, many different areas, and so there's advice available. There's consultation that you can achieve. And a great place to get that is at lunch.
Well, it's funny that Ronnie brought that up because Mr. Pete, or Professor Pete, words it a little bit differently. He says that North Georgia GMRS Network is better than Google. You just key up the radio and ask, and somebody will have the right answer.
Right, yeah. And that's one of those things, too, where Professor Pete is great at throwing a question in our chat group, and a lot of times he just sparks curiosity about what is the answer. So I end up Googling, what he's asking about, because I don't necessarily know, and I don't necessarily feel confident all the time in responding with what I've learned on Google, because I'm not sure it's right. But he poses some interesting questions sometimes. And it's not always radio. Sometimes it's something about Starlink, or who knows what. But what a treasure to be able to engage with and learn from Professor Pete. So glad you brought that up. And yeah, Ronnie, the toolbox is vast and deep, and these regional lunches are, take the day off work if you have to. Go there and meet the folks and enjoy some time, and it's a great thing. Now, the one on the west side, I think, is on Saturdays, so hopefully you don't have to take a day off to get to that one. But some of the others are during the work week. But definitely, that's great advice. Good stuff, Ronnie. Thank you for that. All right, with that, we're going to continue on. Next in the list is Noonan 120, Carmine in Fayetteville. Carmine, I know that you've made some investments in quality materials for your radio station. What kind of tools do you have in your radio toolbox? Noonan 120, are you there?
Noonan 120.
Hey, Carmine, we're just talking about the quality investments that you've made in materials to build your radio station. You want to talk about radio tools that you have to have accomplished that?
Yeah, I sure do. Most of it is building with the equipment that I got come from a lot of the members, Jason and Rome,
Ronnie, Dana. Eventually, I bought all my stuff from BuyTwoWayRadios.com. I got Messi and Poloni cable 13 millimeter /500 Hyperflex, and it was $2.60 a foot. But in my opinion, it's well worth it. Connectors were about $16 a piece, I think. They're good ones. I believe that I spent the extra money and had them tune the exact radio I was buying to the antenna, a 1486 base antenna. It involved cutting the cutting the antenna in certain places. And if you cut too much, I was told, then you throw it away and buy another one. That was about a $110 endeavor, so it was worth $25. Have them do that. I got Shorecom 102 SWR/watt/frequency counter, and like I said, the antenna coaxial cable, probably the most important thing. I got mine double grounded. And like I said, I had a lot to overcome because when I started out with a handheld, it wasn't working in my situation at all because where the geographical location of a hospital 0.3 of a mile across the street and a power station, and a handheld wasn't cutting. Let me break. Anyway, I had a break there for a second. But in the end, it all worked out good. I was able to buy the radio, the meter, coaxial cable, the antenna, the power supply. I bought that all from BuyTwoWayRadios.com. Are they the cheapest? No, they're not the cheapest, but they delivered what they were supposed to in the manner that I paid for. But good cable, good antenna. It's worth its weight in gold. I'll tell anybody. I spend more on the coaxial cable and the connectors in a minute, like I did, because it's like I said. In the end, if you buy a cheap coaxial cable and cheap connectors, it won't take long for them to deteriorate, and you'll be replacing them more likely with something better.
Well, that's a good point, Carmine, and you know it kind of goes along with what I've been saying is that you know it's really better to build up your budget and buy the first class, buy the best stuff you can to put your station together with, even if that means that you have to suffer on with an HT for a few more weeks until you can do that, because in the long run, you know, to have a station that sounds like yours does is something to be really proud of, and you know that's also a reflection on the network. So if you've got a station that just sounds noisy and crappy all the time, and you do nothing to make improvements to your station, you know that's a reflection on all of us. And so sometimes there are circumstances where you're just in a hole. You've got geological barriers to being able to get to a repeater. And there's just not a lot you can do about that. But we need to do some research in those circumstances and see just what the best options are. Do we need to do a propagation study? Do we just need to add 10 more feet to your antenna height? Sometimes a small difference in height can make a huge difference in performance. So, you know, but the answers to those questions require some depth of research, and it's not always easy to come by, and it's not always a matter of just throwing a few dollars at. It may be a matter of a larger investment in a tower, or you know, maybe the circumstances are where you are that you're just not going to be able to get in because of your environment or because of your distance. We've got folks that would like to be members that are just outside of our coverage footprint, and it just doesn't make sense for people to buy into a network that they can't make daily use of. So I understand that, and I wish that we could let everybody in. We don't tell people no, but it just doesn't make sense for folks to become members if they're outside of our range. So these are the things that make the difference between a quality station and the noise that we sometimes hear on a network. So good stuff. Congratulations on putting that great radio station together, Carmine. Next on our list, we have Atlanta 532. Tom in Flowery Branch is in and out. Atlanta 410. Kevin in Alpharetta is in and out. Let me break. Atlanta 1402. Todd he's in the vault in the back of the bank. It's kind of late. The bank's not open. I wonder if he's supposed to be there.
Well, he said it was a top secret location. Well, if that's where he was, maybe he got locked in.
I don't know. All right. And by way of relay, virtual relay, Atlanta 1403, Krista is in and out tonight. We have Chattanooga 139, Robert in Ringgold is in and out. We have Toccoa 32, Terry in Mount Airy is in and out. Atlanta 725, David in Canton is in Holly Springs. I'm not sure where he's at. David is in with us tonight. David, did you have any comments for the net? Any RF tools in your toolbox?
He went to bed.
Yep, they're dropping like flies.
So is the YouTube.
Did YouTube drop?
No.
Viewers? Oh, I see. All right, not hearing anything from David. We're going to go ahead and show him as in and out and continue on with our log here. We have Atlanta 292, Derek in Rockmart was in and out. Of Gainesville 100, Randall in the Philippines is in and out. Blue Ridge 63, Mike in Orlando is, I thought he was in. Now he's out?
Well, I don't know. He was in.
All right, well, he's probably Disney tired, so.
Doing Mickey Mouse things.
That's right. We have Rome 27, Terry in Menlo is in and out. Atlanta 261, Scott in Holly Springs, also in and out, and that'll bring us to Atlanta 900, Keith in Smyrna. Keith, do you have any comments for the net or any tools in your RF radio box? All right. We've run long enough that some of these folks may have tuned out and they're gone. I understand. And so we're going to go ahead and show Keith as in and out. Next on the list is Chattanooga 127, Larry in Chatsworth. Larry, did you have any comments for the net? All right, we're going to go ahead and show Larry as in and out as well and continue on with Atlanta 514, Mike in Cartersville. Mike, do you have any comments for the net?
Good evening, Net Control. I actually have a comment and a question. So the comment very quickly is just I do appreciate the community both on the radio and on the Facebook. Everybody has been extremely helpful. I am currently setting up or testing out in my backyard here. I have a Kenwood 8180 with a Comet antenna and LMR 400 cable connected to it, but I seem to have some really low volume issues, and I'm definitely bringing in a bunch of white noise. Let me break. I do have three things going against me. I'm testing this in the backyard before I do put it up on the roof because I'm waiting on my polyphaser. So I do not have height. I am not grounded, and I do have a adapter that's probably not the best Amazon. I paid around $12 for it, which is an N to PL259 that goes directly into my 8180. But when I hear myself and when others hear me, I'm often very low, bringing in a lot of noise, and I'm curious as to what tools I can use that can help me troubleshoot some of this, and obviously I do have to do the grounding and everything else, but any advice would be most welcome.
Well, overall, it sounds like you're headed in the right direction, but there's a couple of things that are important to know. In a testing configuration, if the antenna is close to the ground will have an impact not only on the way the antenna radiates, but also on the antenna's efficiency and noise floor and its reflectivity.
And its propagation pattern.
So when testing an antenna, it's important to get it up on something. A piece of pipe, a piece of PVC, a piece of 2x4. Get it up and off of the ground and away from trees and away from stuff. Simulate its operating environment the best way that you can, because if you personally are close to that antenna, then the capacitance of your body will couple with that antenna and will artificially change the SWR readings based on that proximity. And that closeness to the antenna can be 4 or 5 feet. You don't have to be right up on it. That antenna needs to be up and away from objects and people and stuff when it's operating in order for it to be able to achieve its best potential. And the common antenna, the 712 is one of that's probably my favorite antenna for a base station installation. I've used that antenna in a couple of applications and have always been happy with it. It's got great gain. It is a very good looking antenna, and it is lightweight. And
that's what Vanguard runs too.
Yeah, that is the antenna we use for Vanguard. So if that's the antenna you're using, you said Comet, but I don't know which model. That should be a performing antenna. But if you've got that thing just a few feet off the ground near a picnic table or near lawn furniture or zip tied to the patio or whatever it might be, that's probably going to be why you're hearing a lot of noise. And I do hear a lot of white noise in your signal, but your audio is over it, so you are getting out. And you're getting out reasonably well. But so some of the things that you can do to improve that circumstance is, one, get that antenna up on a mast of some sort. Two, you'll be surprised at how much of an impact grounding can have on your radio's receive performance. So properly grounding that antenna system and properly grounding your radio equipment, your power supply, etc., all of those things need to be grounded. And properly grounding that polyphaser when you finally get it. All of those things will bring the noise floor down. Let me break. All of those things will bring the noise floor down and will improve your signal strength overall. So
I think there's another thing worth noting here that we haven't brought up. Coax has been brought up a lot tonight. And LMR 400 is great coax within reason.
Oh yeah, well,
if you start running 75, 100 feet in length of LMR 400, you're going to have problems.
Well, that's right, and so every coax that you might use is going to have a certain amount of loss, and some coax is going to have more loss than others. And we very often recommend LMR 400, but personally, I always forget to say LMR 400 is good for runs at 50 feet or less. If your length is going to be greater than 50 feet, you should probably upgrade to either Hardline or LMR 600 or that Messier and Pelosi, I understand, is really good stuff. I don't have any experience with it. But
it's my understanding that's about the step between LMR 400 and LMR 600. So it's like 500 if there was such a thing, but of course Times New Roman doesn't make 500, which is why that number doesn't exist.
So Times New Roman?
Times New Roman is a font. Times, what is it?
Microwave.
Times microwave.
So Jeff's right. They don't make 500, but probably that Messier and Pelosi is somewhere in that range. Like I say, I have no experience with it, but I've heard a lot of good things about it, and I wouldn't be afraid to try it. And Carmine had mentioned $16 for connectors. That seems like about right for that size of cable and that kind of a configuration. So I think he also said $2.60 a foot. That's probably not far from LMR 600. So all things to consider, and all things that have the potential to make an improvement to your station.
And the other thing I want to point out a little bit too is he mentioned that he was getting complaints of low audio. With those Kenwood radios, depending on which microphone you have, some of them have very, very good noise canceling in the microphone itself. So you got to be right up on it and talk good and loud into it. You can't talk across it like the old CB trucker days. Those, if you have the Kenwood noise canceling mic, you got to be in it. So there's that to consider too.
That's a good point. Let's break. So these are all things that that you can kind of factor into making improvements to your station. And quite honestly, once you do all of these things and you get your station sounding good and you have good quality signal reports, or you've checked yourself with Zello, or you've tuned into the net to listen on YouTube to what your station sounds like, there's always going to be one more thing.
In your case, it's 2 hours and 35 minutes into the live stream if you want to go hear yourself.
So there you go. Any other questions, Mike?
No, I do appreciate it. It's actually funny. I was laughing because you keyed in on quite a few things. One, it's not elevated high off the ground. It's only about 3 feet. I do have some items, including myself, in relatively close proximity to it, so I'm sure that's all contributing to it as well. So I am actually going to mount it up on the roof and then start these tests again while I wait on that polyphaser. But I appreciate everybody's input, and you'll be hearing me.
Did we ever get what model Comet antenna he had? Before you run off, Mike, did you have the 712, or is it a different model Comet?
I have the 712. I have the 712 EF, if that makes a difference.
Well, the 712 EF is an amateur antenna. It is tuned for 440 to 450. The 712 EFC, C being commercial, is tuned for 460 to 470. So you need the C at the end of your model number, because otherwise you're trying to use an amateur antenna out of band. So there is some nuances there to make sure you got the right one for what you're trying to do before you install it on the roof.
Right. Now, I don't know how tunable the 712 is. Theoretically, you could break that at its joint and maybe make a little trim in there to get it to where it's going to resonate in...
well, there's multiple dipoles in there, so you're going to have to tune each one.
Yeah, so that becomes tricky. I don't know that I would venture into that. Your best bet might be to return that antenna or sell it, and then pursue that 712. Is it the ECF or the EFC? I can
EFC. If it's just EF, it's only for amateur.
Yeah.
And the other thing with the 712 is, before you install them, you got to flip them over and tap them gently on a block of wood several times, and there's little foam discs inside the tube, and you need to stretch that element out. When it comes in the package, it's folded in half, so when you put it together, the element's all crushed down. So you need that element to get stretched back out inside that fiberglass tube so that you can have a good radiation pattern. So a couple things to check for you. Number one, make sure you got the C. And number two, flip it over and make sure that element is good and stretched out inside that tube.
Yeah, and this is a good application for a rig expert, or even a nano VNA. All right, so he should be able to hook that antenna up to a nano VNA and sweep that antenna with the VNA and be able to see where
sweet spot.
Where that resonant frequency is, and it'll probably be just below the GMRS band. And so tuning that antenna, as Jeff points out, might not be a very easy thing to do, but you'll have a good visual idea of where that antenna is and why it might not be the best antenna for your application.
Or go back and dig the package out and make sure you just didn't forget that you did buy the C, and that is actually the one you have.
And that could be. So if you bought it from Chat Radio, you probably bought the C whether you realize it or not. And that's a good point. And that kind of goes into what Cindy had said earlier in the evening about, she thought she had the RG8, but it turned out they had the RG8X.
Yep.
And so that made a big difference in the performance of their antenna system. And so the 712 is a great antenna, but as Jeff pointed out, the EF and the EFC are just different enough that the EF is not going to serve well for GMRS. Let's break.
Comment.
He's trying to come back.
Go ahead and come back.
I just didn't walk around the antenna enough. It is the EFC. But I definitely will go and work on tapping down the package because I was not aware after it was told that it would be that way.
Yeah, and these are things that you don't know until somebody tells you. It's not written on the package. There's not an instruction book that gives you all these nuances. There's not we just don't know these things
It's kind
until
of a tip of the trade, so to speak. I've installed so many of those antennas, I just naturally know to do that before I put it up.
Yeah, and so I don't know how to convey all of the things that somebody needs to know being brand new in radio, because usually the question is, what radio do I buy? Well, consider all the radios that you've been looking at and don't buy any of those. Go get the Anytone or go get the Kenwood. Those are the radios. Everything else, forget about it. But you're on the right track, and you're not far from having a great station. So,
especially only being 3 feet off the ground right now. He
yeah.
sounds really good for 3 feet off the ground.
At 3 feet, that antenna should be amazing at 15 feet.
Right.
Yeah. So good stuff.
10-foot piece of fence post might be all he needs.
Could very well be. All right, with that, we're going to continue on. We've got Chattanooga 123. Steve in Ringgold is in and out. Alabama 22 Hal in Cedar Bluff is in and out. Columbus 25 Peter in West Point in and out. Chattanooga 160 David in Chickamauga is in and out. Noonan 345 Tim in Sonoya is in and out. I've got a couple of YouTube check-ins here. I've got WSDA 207 Kathy in Jackson Lake checking in on YouTube. I've got Rome 12 Mark in Rome is also checking in on YouTube. I've got Atlanta 395 Mark in Kennesaw, in Marietta, is in and out. I've got WSCS 632 Merritt is a YouTube check-in tonight. I've got Rome 90 Thomas from Cave Springs is a YouTube check-in. I've got Chattanooga 206 John in, is it Danbridge? Is a YouTube check-in. And Chattanooga 60 Jason in Hickson, another YouTube check-in. That brings us next to Atlanta 255. Jennifer in Dawsonville is in with us tonight. Jennifer, do you have any comments for tools in your radio toolbox?
Hey guys, Atlanta 255. How am I coming in?
Well, I'd never know it was a homemade antenna. You sound great.
No, this is the little Barbie Midland antenna on a ammo can in my Radio Shack.
I didn't know she owned commercial produced antennas.
Yeah, all I saw were pieces of copper tape on a piece of paper and scissors and
clotheslines.
Yeah,
paracord.
So, yeah, I didn't know she had ever purchased an antenna, but that's fantastic. Your radio sounds great. What other tools do you have in your toolbox, and where do you come up with the ideas to fabricate these various antennas?
As far as tools go, pretty basic. Nuts, bolts, wire cutters, crimpers, soldering iron, everything that everybody else has, I'm sure.
Everything but a pair of scissors.
Heat shrink, connectors.
You built an antenna
drill,
out of it.
Screwdriver. I don't know. Let's see. Oh, well, no, wait a minute. I don't know if anybody's set it yet, but ferrite rings. That's what I'm putting on my radio coax right now, going into the radios. And as far as idea goes, I don't know. Just listen and see if something will work. Oh, well, one thing I didn't hear, I did hear paper, but I keep grid paper on my desk for sketching and planning.
Would you say graph paper?
Yeah. That's a very good tool to have to kind of sketch out ideas, and having grid paper allows you to draw something out and have some kind of basis in scale and size relative to other things. So that's a great tool. I used to use that quite a lot. In fact, I made my own grid paper that I used for laying out track segments on the railroad so that I could build them in software in a database. I found that if I sketched all of that out before I began building, it made it easier for me to understand the relationships between devices, the equations that I might need to be able to make various things work, and just going through that exercise of sketching it out. Kind of like we talked about earlier, that if you write it down, it has an impact on the way that you can remember it. So by writing it out, it would cause me to think analytically about that work and how various devices and components would impact one another. And then COVID came along, and I didn't have access to that grid paper anymore. And I at that point, I kind of shifted gears and learned how to do that same stuff all electronically. So I don't use paper in my work hardly ever anymore. Everything is done on the computer. If we do have a piece of paper, it generally gets scanned in, but very rarely does that even happen. All the documentation and plans are typically on PDFs that I can look at, and once upon a time I would print those PDFs and bring them home with me so that I could work on those projects, from wherever I might be. I don't do that anymore. It's all on screen.
You're still all on screen, but I'm still a big fan of the pen and paper. All the work that we did in Vanguard, for me, that's all on paper.
There's pieces of plywood in the barn with all of your notes all over 'em.
Right.
Yeah, there's all kinds of documentation.
That's the memory thing that you keep saying. If I write it down, it's in there, and
Yeah.
I'm not going to lose it.
Well, I think he's lost it a long time ago, but that's another topic.
I meant what I wrote down.
Right, yeah. So good stuff. So everything in your toolbox, including the graph paper. And what about, you probably don't have any good scissors around the house anymore, do you?
Good. I mean, I'm looking at a pair of scissors right now. I mean, it might be the third pair I've gone through this week, but they're good right now.
Good for the moment. All right, that pair is still safe for the moment. That's good stuff. Well, it's been fun watching all the various projects that you've embarked on, and it'll be even more fun to see what the next great idea is. Kind of cool, that piece of foil tape that you'd put on a piece of paper and turn that into an antenna. It was the neatest thing to have you sitting here beside me and whip that thing out of your back pocket. Hey, look at this.
Well, I'm kind of nervous. She's volunteered to come help us at Jeep Fest, but she's going to start building antennas out of stuff we need here in Vanguard. This microphone stand will probably be an antenna if Jennifer sits here long enough.
Well, yeah. We might have to hide some things from her, but it'll be good to have her along, and it'll be nice to be able to work net control with Jennifer one more time, and maybe more than that. So just know that there's a chair here for you anytime that you want to make that drive.
Definitely appreciate that. It was a long drive, but it was a very good time. I did enjoy co-net controlling with you, and I'm staring at the copper tape antenna now. And pretty much, I guess, where the ideas come from, if it will conduct electricity, I think I can turn it into an antenna. It might not be a good antenna, and it might not be something you want to transmit on and blow your radio up, but you could probably listen on it. So that's pretty much it. I've got speaker wire, too. I've got a whole yard full of antennas in the backyard right now because I'm dabbling in HF radio. And those antennas are crazy long. Back to you.
Well, antenna science in amateur radio is its own fascinating world, and a phrase that you commonly hear in amateur radio is 100 watts in a wire, and the idea is that that's where it all begins from. You've got your basic HF radio. Most commonly, HF radios are capable of 100 watts. Some are capable of more. There are power amplifiers that can get you all the way up to 1,500 watts. But if you can't do it on 100 watts in a wire, then, you know, you're probably not going to do much better on 1,500 watts. Because the truth of the matter is, the difference between 100 watts and 200 watts is only a couple of decibels. It seems like that might be a big difference, but you have to think logarithmically, and so your propagation at 200 watts is just a small amount better than your propagation would be at 100 watts. So if you're talking about 1,500 watts, yeah, that's a lot more power, and logarithmically it's a much bigger signal, but in terms of what that signal does when it gets out into the world, 100 watts is really pretty good. And in FM radio, 50 watts does a pretty good job for us in North Georgia GMRS. So good stuff, Jennifer, and looking forward to seeing more of those projects and more of the tools that you use to put them all together. Next on the list, we have Noonan 483, Randy in Sanoa. Randy, did you have any comments for the net? Let's see.
You get another YouTube checking at the bottom too.
While everything went dead, this is Cage Code 41. I'd like to check in later. I'm not sure if you're still going now or not. Everything went dead.
Was that, no, that was... All right, Cades Cove 41, I think that was. We'll go ahead and make an entry in the log. We'll take a round of late check-ins here in just a minute, but we'll stick you in here for now. We were trying to reach out to Noonan 483 Randy in Sanoa and heard no response. So we're going to go ahead and show Randy as in and out. And at this time, we're going to go ahead and open up the floor for any late check-ins. We're going to take one round only of late check-ins. Or any questions or comments, the floor is open. Net Control standing by.
This is Atlanta 191, WRPK 459, Jim in Holly Springs. Just in and out, no comments. I was actually just watching the part of this on YouTube as a rerun.
This is Net Control. This is Atlanta 780 WQUV 439, Houston and Austell.
and O. E R R M R A 81. Renee and what one in 8. Would you mind letting me in? Letting me out.
Net control.
Gainesville 285.
This is Gainesville 285. WRKN 234. Checking in and out from Choctaw, Oklahoma. And by way of relay, Gainesville 286. Lynn from Murrayville, Georgia. Checking in and out from Choctaw, Oklahoma.
I'm not even going to try to spell that. Renee was Zello.
Net control. This is Septina WSCV 660. Wow.
What was that?
I don't know. I think he's still talking and just not holding the repeater.
Dead key from Noonan. All right, Net Control is going to go ahead and acknowledge this round of check-ins. We have Cades Cove 41 Tim in Knoxville is in tonight. Atlanta 191 Jim in Holly Springs is in and out. And Jim, if you would please send us an email to jeepfest@nggmrs.org. We'd like to make contact with you. We have Atlanta 780 Houston in Austell is in tonight. Cades Cove 81 Renee in Rockwood is in and out. Gainesville 285 CV in Choctaw, Oklahoma is in and out, as well as Gainesville 286 Lynn, also in Choctaw, Oklahoma, in and out. Did I say that right?
Yeah, but I'm not even going to try to spell it.
Well, spelling it and saying it, as long as we said it close to being right, I think that we're good. There was a station on Lookout that we heard a little bit of audio from, but we didn't hear enough of it to make any sense of it. It looked like you weren't holding the repeater because it was coming and going. So Lookout station, we're going to go ahead and continue on with the net.
Then we had another attempt with the Noonan repeater with zero audio. It was just a dead key.
We had several dead keys from Noonan tonight. So those stations that we didn't get an RF check-in, if you have the means to check out our YouTube station, you can go to YouTube and search North Georgia GMRS Network, and you can find tonight's live stream, and you can check in there in the chat for tonight's live stream. And that's another way that you can get in. We have a handful of YouTube check-ins tonight, and if you want to be one of those after having not gotten in on RF, that's another option. So let's go back to.
Did you acknowledge Damon?
I don't know that I did. So let's go right there. Atlanta 355 Damon in Canton is a YouTube check-in. We've got you in and out, and that'll bring us to Cades Cove 41 Tim in Knoxville. Tim, did you have comments for the net? What do you use for RF tools?
Yes. First, I've been monitoring you on and off via Zello and my handheld, and I'm going to switch over to my handheld now and see how that sounds, if that's okay. Just take a second. It's right here by me.
Did Tacoma drop out?
Yeah, it's been dropped out.
Okay.
Tim, you're dropping the repeater, and when you are holding the repeater, you're almost covered up in static. I can hear your voice, and I heard you say, "This is Tim, am I coming in okay?" But it's not good quality conversation audio.
Okay, I was wondering. Switch back to Zello on my cell phone. Yes, I had a couple of questions about radios. One, what is my most valuable tool for radio transmission? That is the on-off switch and the push-to-talk button.
Well, I suppose those could be valuable tools. As Ronnie said, when you push the push-to-talk button, you're engaging with the network, and as Ronnie said, there's over 1,000 tools or 1,000 sets of ears out there listening, and hopefully can get you some good answers to those questions. And if you're interested in the audio quality that we just heard, it was at the 3 hour and 4 minute mark when you tried with your handheld into the Cades Cove repeater.
Thanks for the timestamp on that. I'll go back and look at that. I did have a question about connectors. I've heard several conversations about you need to buy the best quality you can, but how do I know what is the best quality? I go online, I see connectors, price A is say $4, price B is $12. I don't know one from another. How do I know?
You know, that's a good question and not an easy one to answer. So it comes down to, I guess brand snobbery. If you're buying Andrews connectors, those are not cheap, and those are very, very good connectors.
Well, we also circle back to, again, a trusted vendor.
And that's the key here is if you can find a vendor that will sell you quality products, then that's the vendor that's going. It might not be the cheapest. You might not have the cheapest connectors. It's just like when you go to the Hamfest, you can go to a lot of different vendors and you can find bins and racks and boxes full of all sorts of connectors, and they're all in various price ranges. And you can get a pocket full of connectors for $10. But should you? Probably not. I've got lots of those connectors, and they have been the source of problems in installations that we've done here. So if you go to a trusted supplier, a trusted vendor, and just have a conversation that, I don't want junky stuff. I want to be able to do this once and do it right, and not have to come back again and change stuff out because I bought junk. If you can buy from Chat Radio, if you can buy from what's that place called? We sell two-way radios, or twowayradios.com, or I've heard a lot of good things about that vendor. And
there may be a reputable vendor up there in Knoxville that you and I are just simply not aware of.
There is actually. Scott Bonk has a radio shop up there somewhere, and he's on our Facebook page. And I think that he could probably help you source some quality components. So I can't think of the name of his company is Tennessee Technology or something along that line. But just look on our Facebook page for Scott Bonk, B-O-N-K.
I think Scott Bonk is going to be in the southern region of the state, but it's still another resource.
I'm not entirely sure where he's at, but I thought he was in the Knoxville area. In any case, check that out. That might be a good source for connectors. If you want to buy online, You can buy from MPD Digital. I have nothing but good experiences with MPD Digital. You can actually buy from them through Amazon, but I prefer to go straight to their own webpage and buy directly from MPD Digital. They have connectors, they have cable end connectors, they have RF cable. Time to break. And they have the accessories that you're looking for. Accessories that you're looking. Is somebody trying to get in double with us? All right, so let me break and see what that other traffic is. But MPD Digital is a high quality vendor that I would trust and recommend. Let me break, see what that traffic is. That's local. That's not even on a repeater, is it?
Simplex, yeah.
Well, now it's on a repeater. All right, I think that was just some simplex interference or something local to us here. Looks like it did hit the repeater, but we were hearing it directly too, so wideband noise. All right, hopefully that answers your question then, Tim.
Yes, I'll just make a comment. I went to a fairly local ham fest not too long ago and bought a mag mount and an antenna, and I didn't find it worked any better than just a rubber duck on my handheld.
Yeah, and it could very well be, because I've had that same experience. I bought a kind of an expensive mag mount antenna to use with my very inexpensive HT radio that we thought we would use in a car. And the performance was never really very good. And quite honestly, I really don't think it had very much to do with the antenna. I think it had a lot more to do with that inexpensive radio. You know, a quality handheld radio is really going to perform at its best with its very own whip antenna. HTs are odd animals because, you know, in the radio world we have an impedance output for an antenna system that really expects to see a ground as a counterpoise. And so we can achieve that pretty easily in an installed system, whether it be in a vehicle or whether it be a base station. We can pretty readily achieve a ground for that radio with very modest efforts. But as soon as you put an HT in your hand, the grounding system and the antenna system are kind of integral to that radio. And the grounding system really ends up being the capacitive coupling that radio achieves through your handhold, through your body. So when we go to do things like mount that radio in a car and use an external mic and then use an external antenna, the impedances go all over the place. A lot of times an HT radio will not be a 50 ohm radio. A lot of times that's a 35 ohm radio or a 62 ohm radio. But the antenna that they provide with it is also a 62 ohm antenna. And then when we go putting aftermarket antennas on, especially if there's any amount of coax associated with that antenna, we often have impedance problems and we run into poor performance with external antennas. So I'm not a fan of changing antennas on an HT unless it was an antenna that was manufactured by that HT manufacturer and marketed to be used with it.
And the other thing to consider is not all antennas play nice with mag mounts. Comet 2x4 antenna is one of my favorite antennas. Will not work and will not get a good capacitive couplings through a mag mount. Put it on a lip mount or any other kind of mount where it gets a good solid ground and attachment to that metal, they work great. But mag mount, no dice.
And the big variable, though, in my mind, is the HT. It's designed to be a handheld radio, and when we take it out of that and add accessories to it, we very often diminish its capabilities and performance. All right.
You got a break.
I got a break. All right. With that, we're going to continue on. Next on the list is Atlanta 191 Jim in Holly Springs. We'll look forward to reaching out to Jim here in a little bit, maybe tomorrow on email. Also, we have Atlanta 780 Houston in Austell. Houston, did you have any comments for the net tonight? And, I don't know if you were around for Julie's tips earlier, but she made mention of that device that you made out of a Harbor Freight inexpensive volt ohm meter, the field strength meter. I know that's just one of the many tools that you use. Tell us about some of your radio tools, Houston.
Hi, good evening, Jeff, Justin, everybody else on the net. Well, should I start back in 1966? I have a CB Porter lab back from then. Well, I don't use it anymore. Let's not even talk about it. I'm kind of favorable to the MFJ 269C antenna tuner, and I've got a Bird true line watt meter and cable making equipment, Simpson meters. I got a little bit of everything. Of course, I've been doing this since 1966, so I got quite a number of things. I can't name them all, but I would be glad to help anybody out.
Well, I'm sure you've got quite the collection of tools that you've accumulated over the years, and I didn't know you had any Simpson meters. That is, those old Simpson analog meters, of course, you can still buy them. They still make them, and it's the same classic meter it's been for decades. It's just a great meter, and it's got a 4 or 5 inch wide scale on the face of it. They're rock solid meters, and one thing that's cool about a Simpson, these are analog needle swinging scales for a volt ohm meter. And on railroad circuits, sometimes we have circuits that are miles and miles long, and they will pick up voltages that are kind of phantom. They're not really there. There's a voltage present, but there's no current behind it. It's just induced from the atmosphere because the circuit is so very long. And so it's not enough energy to kick a relay, but it is enough energy to show a fluke meter, a digital volt ohm meter with a very, very high input impedance, that there's a voltage there. And so we get these false positives sometimes when we use these fancy digital meters. Whereas the Simpson, which is a very specific railroad tool, that is one that is issued by the railroad for work on these circuits. The Simpson has a much lower impedance, and when you put the leads of a Simpson on a circuit, it actually puts a load on that circuit. It's not a big load, but it's enough of a load that Simpson meter will tell you the truth, and if there is no voltage there, it'll show you no voltage, whereas that fluke meter may be telling you that there's 3 or 4 or 5, 6 volts there. So that's something that I've always been fascinated with, is the difference between those two meters. Now, on the same time, that Simpson can tell you the frequency of the AC voltage that you're measuring. You can't get that out of a Simpson. But so these tools have their application and their place. And I just love analog meters. I love to see the needle swing. There's a lot of information conveyed when you put an analog meter on a circuit, and if that needle jumps and hops, or if that needle just casually swings over, there's a lot to be known about what's going on in that circuit just by the way that meter reacts. And you can't see that in a digital circuit, a digital meter. But there's things the digital meter can show you that the analog won't. So good stuff. Good contributions. And Houston, do you remember where you found those instructions for that field strength meter?
No, I don't, Justin. I may still have them around here somewhere. I've got several different books and folders and all that I keep that stuff in. I'll see if I can find it, and I'll get you a copy of it if I can.
Somebody's still jamming Flagshirt.
So I recall seeing that meter. You broke it out when you were here one time, and it's basically a $7 Harbor Freight meter. I think back at the time it was probably a $4 meter, but you drill a hole in the case and you install one of those collapsible antennas, and that is connected somewhere inside the meter. And there's some simple modifications that you made, and it's just a do-it-yourself. Probably something you could do in an hour or two. I don't recall if there was any soldering. I bet if there is, it's minimal. And
I bet you Jennifer's already making one as we speak.
She's probably already found the instructions. Jennifer, if you found the instructions, you should post them. And it's a cool thing. So it doesn't tell you anything specific, but it will show you an RF field. And so, like with an HT, you can get a sense that radio is actually outputting a signal, or maybe it's not. Maybe the finals are dead and you don't know it. This is an instrument that will show that to you, because sometimes it's not practical to put an HT on a Surecom, or the VNA is not going to tell you if the radio is outputting or not. So there's some tools that you might have that won't tell you the truth. The field strength meter is a very basic and simple instrument, and it'll tell you the truth. All right, Houston, did you have anything else for us?
Yes, sir. Well, not really that much, but that field strength meter will also tell you whether you've got your antenna centered on whatever you're putting it on. If you walk around the vehicle with it, it'll give you higher or lower readings of which direction that your antenna is transmitting to the most. Give you some kind of idea of where you've got your antenna, where you might need to put it.
That's an excellent application for a tool like that. So like in my truck, the antenna isn't anywhere near centered. It's out there on the front corner. And so the performance of my truck is going to be impacted by the direction in which I'm traveling. Whereas if the antenna were mounted directly over the cab, I might have a little bit better performance in all directions. So this is a meter that can show you what that performance looks like. That's a cool thing. I didn't know it would do that. That's pretty neat.
And a lot of times you can determine that with a magnetic antenna that you can move around on the roof of it, going forward or backward, depending on the length of your vehicle, and get you a good center. If you're going to put a hole in it, find the right place to put it the first time.
The ever so scary put a hole in the roof for an NMO mount. Yeah. I'm probably not going to. At least not. I don't know. I don't know if I can with my truck, because of the way that I use the truck. My fear is if I had an antenna up there, I'd break it off. But
well, I think NMOs are going to start to become more popular again, whereas they kind of faded away a little bit, but I think they're going to come back with all these aluminum vehicles. That's kind of the best way again.
Yeah, because you can still ground to that aluminum, but you can't
use a mag mount without glue.
Well, a magnet will stick to any aluminum vehicle with the right kind of glue. However, you're probably not going to have worthwhile grounding.
That's right.
Through that. So good stuff, Houston. All right. Well, thanks a lot for being a part of tonight's net. We're gonna wrap this up here just momentarily. I've got just a handful of in and outs to call out. I have Cades Cove 81 Renee in Rockwood is in and out. I have Gainesville 285. Charlie Victor 2 times in Oklahoma is in and out, as well as Gainesville 286 Lynn, also in Oklahoma. And we have WRXY 699 is a guest check-in from YouTube. And that is the end of our roster. So we're right here at the tail position. And I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up for tonight. So this is going to conclude the North Georgia GMRS Regional Net. Tonight we had a total of
72.
We had a total of 72 chickens tonight, including myself and Jeff. Net control will now be returning the repeaters back to normal use. Everyone who signed in should sign out. And don't forget to like and subscribe on our YouTube channel. Remember, comments on the channel show engagement and help YouTube to properly apply the metrics to the channel in ways that allow it to be seen by others. So the more people that click on it, the more people will be directed to it, and that improves our overall numbers. So if you're in there, throw us a like and a subscribe. And if you've already subscribed, go ahead and unsubscribe and resubscribe.
That's not how that works.
And subscribe. Have your friends and family come over and subscribe as well. But all those things will help the channel. Thanks for allowing us to serve as your net control this evening. We managed to get by. I don't know how, but we made it all the way to the end. Good night, everyone. This is Atlanta 946, WQYR 514. My name is Justin.
And Atlanta 750, WRMR 367. My name is Jeff.
We are North Georgia GMRS Network.
And we are clear. Good night, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
Good night, folks.